A premium membership at chess.com will help you improve your game with full access to a powerful set of learning tools. Unlimited tactics let you practice like a master, with more than 50,000 puzzles to challenge you at every level. Our library of interactive chess lessons, created by master coaches, will enhance every aspect of your game. And after each game you play, the computer analysis feature will give you feedback on every move you played, turning every game into a chance to learn. And that's not all. Premium benefits also include unlimited tournaments, video lessons, the Opening Explorer, and much, much more. Upgrade now to take your game to the next level.
Welcome in, everybody, to Saturday's edition. Those are rounds 9 and 10 up ahead here on the FIDE Online Nations Cup. We're getting down to it. It's going to be an exciting final day in our regular segment of this event before heading to the Super Final tomorrow on Sunday. And to help me bring it home this Saturday with all the action is, of course, the one and only, the Grandmaster Robert Hess. Looking great today, buddy, in that suit. And the people want to hear from you and know what this is all about. What is this event and what is the Online Nations Cup?
Well, the Online Nations Cup, if you have not been following, it is a great tournament featuring 6 teams from around the world. 4 of those teams are from countries, 1 is from a continent, and the final team is from the rest of the world, comprised of some of the top players who were not already seeded into teams. And you have $180,000 in prizes for the first online event of its kind. It's been a great battle, and well, as everybody knows at this point, Team China is already through.
Team China has already qualified their way. They guaranteed themselves a spot in the Super Final yesterday. And, of course, we will have a couple of other teams trying to catch them. Team USA and Team Europe face off early this morning. That matchup is going to have all of our attention, and we're going to be diving into previewing each board and giving you a look into what we expect to see there. But before we do, let's remind everybody quickly of the format. Of course, we already mentioned that all of this sort of preliminary work we've been doing, which has been amazing. It leads us to who's going to qualify for the Super Final. These 6 invited teams have been battling it out throughout this double round robin. And as we said, 2 teams are qualifying their way till tomorrow. Remember that in case of a tie, the top finishing team from the double round robin stage is declared the winner. I don't think we're going to see that today. All China really needs is a half a point in a match to pretty much secure that no one can even tie them. So we'll most likely be having a Super Final on Sunday. Don't you worry about that. The time control is 25 minutes plus a 10-second increment, one of the most official time controls you can have in Rapid. And as we said, each team has 4 players and, of course, team captains along with them. Now, Robert, as we talk about the standings again, and we're going to start diving into previewing the matchup here between Europe and USA, the first thing we wanted to do this morning was remind everybody that we have a lot of people playing for all these teams, and so we put together this graphic to show how everyone is performing respectively from each team. Now, remember that it's not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison here, Robert. Obviously, Yu Yongyi competing on board 3, whereas you see a guy like Hikaru Nakamura competing on board 1. But still, what speaks to you when you look at who our top performers have been throughout this event?
Well, Yu Yangyi has been amazing for Team China, Fabiano Caruana, of course, for the USA. And, these 2 players really have stood out to me. Artemiev can make a claim as well, but it's really been about Yu Yangyi and Caruana in my eyes.
Well, and Levon Aronian has had a great event, but I guess it's only slightly tainted by a couple of losses on the beginning and end, on the bookends, if you will, of his tournament. He started off with a tough game against Artemiev on day 1, and then lost to bring the event to a close yesterday versus Vida Gujrathi. So, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, I think that those are kind of the people we've been seeing be the top performers. Yu Yongyi is, well, what can you really say about the guy, right? He's only played 1 round less than Hikaru Nakamura, and he still has more points, right? I mean, that guy has just been an absolute wrecking ball on board 3 for China. And if that continues, they are going to be tough to beat in the Super Final. But before we get there, let's start breaking down the pairings, Robert. We start with Team World versus Team Russia. Unfortunately for both of these teams, this doesn't have as much at stake as they maybe had hoped for a Saturday match, but still going to be some of the world's best chess players throwing down here.
For sure. And, while for both these teams, they're out of contention to qualify for the Super Final, we see that still stellar lineups. Vladislav Artemiev, I mentioned him by name earlier. He's been performing well. And it's going to be a great matchup featuring Alireza Firouzja. Whenever you see Firouzja in the mix, you know that your attention should be on his game. But unfortunately for the team from the rest of the world, they're not competing for the super final.
The other team also not competing for the super final is Team India, but that doesn't make their match coming up here with China any less important. Let's talk a little bit about that matchup here. FIDE Gujarati on board one is the big storyline, right? The team captain giving himself a rest round. Will it be a rest day? We don't know. But FIDE playing on board one is going to be exciting for us to check out. Obviously, that puts Pentala Hare Krishna on board 2 and Adiban Bhaskaran on board 3, respectively. So interesting stuff here. I mean, I think you'd like to see Team India continue to build on their momentum of the last few rounds, going up against Yu Yangyi, who's back in the lineup, maybe to work out any kinks he might have developed because he missed a round yesterday. Tournament organizers forbid.
And you see that for Team China, Dingli Ren sitting this one out as Team China has practically locked up first place. They feel like the load management can continue. Yu Yangyi sat yesterday here. Dingli Ren will sit this round and maybe even the later round today just to make sure he's well rested for Sunday's super final.
And then we have the marquee matchup, and there's absolutely no debate about it. Team USA versus Team Europe. This is where a lot of our focus will be because it's really between these two teams to qualify for tomorrow's super final. The only real, I guess, change in the lineup from what we saw yesterday from Team Europe is Anish Giri back in at board 3. Jan-Christoph Duda played both rounds 7 and 8 respectively. So your thought on Garry Kasparov as the team captain's decision to put Anish in here? He will be facing Wesley So with the black pieces.
And Jan-Christoph Duda went 1 out of 2 yesterday, where Yu Yangyi just blew him off the board with a blistering attack. And then JKD recovered against Hare Krishna in a topsy-turvy game. So perhaps former world champion, the great Garry Kasparov, saying, even though you scored that 1 point for us, I'm still not certain about your performance. And we need to win, and we need to do it now. So Anish Giri, he has more experience than JKD does. They're probably about equivalent in rapid strength. It will change from day to day. But I also like the inclusion there of Nana Zagnidze. Wesley So singled her out in his interview yesterday, saying, that is a tough player there on board 4. But Irina Krush has been equally formidable for Team USA. So this is a matchup that clearly can go either way, and it's for all the marbles.
What do you give to Garry Kasparov looking at Wesley So and Anish Giri stylistically and making the decision that he thinks that maybe because of Jan-Christoph's, I guess, slightly more aggressive style at this point, there is a little bit more of an up and down in his play. I was thinking about the strategy there and evaluating that even if he's putting in Anish Giri, without any jokes meant about this, to draw Wesley So with the black pieces. These guys play each other so often at the highest levels, right? And I think because of that, maybe he just feels a little more confident stylistically that Anish Giri can get the job done because Wesley So and him are both very similar. They play each other so much, and that prep might help him hold the half point if that's what Team Europe needs.
I think you raise a good point there, Danny, that if I need to win and I were Garry Kasparov, I'm probably putting in JKD for his sort of adventurous style, and he can get you a victory in any given game. But if you are looking at this from that point of view that you just said, I just want you to hold off Wesley So, such a strategically sound player who will outlast you and grind you down in a long game, that Anish Giri, with that experience playing in the Grand Chess Tour every year, he gets many games against Wesley So in these elite events, that this is a wise decision by Garry.
Well, let's dive in here now. We've talked about what we think the strategies might be, but let's actually look at the math here. This is a kind of a complicated graphic that we put together this morning. Not in the sense that it doesn't make sense, but there's a lot to take in there. So, Robert, obviously, Team USA and Team Europe, as listed there, are the only two teams that can advance to join China, who was already qualified. As you look at the different possible scenarios there, and I'm not asking you to play prediction or play favorites, but what are you looking at here as what seems to be the most likely outcome of the different possible ways that each team can advance?
It's just, for both the USA and Europe, it's win and you're in. So if you win as the USA against Europe, it's done. It's just complete. You have qualified for the super final. And so Europe knows that, and they can still make it if they tie the USA and then win their final match. And USA has to play China in the final round. So as you see here, the different possibilities are listed in front of you. And for 3 of the teams, you're already out of contention. You're just playing for fun, for pride. But for USA and Europe, I mean, you control your own destiny. What more could you ask for? But for Europe being down a point in the overall standings right now, your task is a little tougher.
Well, and the one scenario that's a little scary for the USA is just to draw your attention to that third bullet point that's listed under Europe, is that if they only draw Europe, then they're facing that really tough matchup versus China, right? Because if they draw Europe, I think we would agree that Europe is going to be favored against Team World, right? And if that's the case, USA facing against China, where you got to make sure you don't lose that match, that's or even draw it, right? So if they draw Europe and then draw China, they do put the fate back in Europe's hands, right? And that's what makes this really exciting here on the last day. I think it does come down to you control your destiny right here, right now in round 9. That's exciting for all of us. But if there's a draw match here, we are going to have some serious drama in this last round where Team USA has to get the job done against China. Otherwise, they risk Europe leapfrogging them at the last second.
It's very true. And, nobody really knows what it takes to defeat Team China anyway, but at least you get the chance. You get the opportunity to play them on Super Final Sunday. So we'll see what is ahead for us today.
Well, I'm going to make a call here to bring up our daily question based on your comment right there. That was a fantastic point. Nobody really knows what it takes to beat China. And guess what our daily question is? What's it going to take to beat China in the Super Final? And so obviously the first step is getting there, and that's where all of our attention is going to be today. But use the hashtag Nations Cup. And, for those who are super fans and you've been watching this event throughout, we also had you with a question yesterday, let you play the role of a team captain. So I'm actually curious. Let's get some real answers. What kind of lineup would you field for USA? What kind of lineup would you field for Europe, and why from a matchup perspective? Maybe a great answer will ultimately prove kind of prophetic in terms of what we're going to see tomorrow in the Super Final. We'll see. Either way, we are moments away from the first moves being made, so Rob and I are going to take our last chance for a break before round 9 gets going here. Don't go anywhere. The FIDE Online Nations Cup continues in just a minute. And we are back here just seconds away from the first moves being made. We have our board ready, our coffee by our side. Some of the people in chat saying it looks like I just woke up. They're not wrong. It was 4 a.m. here, although I did at least get dressed from the top up, okay? you don't know what's going on down low, and that's how it's meant to be. Robert, you ready?
I'm very ready. I can't wait for this matchup ahead of us between Team USA and Team Europe, because I think that's where our focus has to remain, as they are deciding who plays China tomorrow on Super Final Sunday. And Danny, when you see this game here between Hikaru and Maxime, these are players we've seen go head to head so many times in elite super tournaments over the board, in the Speed Chess Championship, in the Pro Chess League. What do you make of Hikaru's decision just to play this kind of exchange Slav and a tamer approach?
Interesting, going away from the theory we've seen repeated a lot by Hikaru as white and black. He's been an expert in this, the closed structure we've seen in the bishop f4 kind of queen's gambit declined positions. We saw him play it as black and kind of get away with a blunder yesterday against Alireza Firouzja, had us talking a lot, and then Hikaru confirming in chat, yeah, it was just a blunder, which was pretty funny. But what do I make of it? I mean, I think it's an interesting way to take some of the potential theory risk out of the position, but also maybe have MVL guessing a little bit in terms of what the footwork is Nakamura has planned. Because in a position like this that's a little more tame, there's going to be some subtleties that decide who gets an edge in the middle game, and white gets to dictate a little bit of that, I guess, in terms of having the first move. But I don't really have much to draw to it. But you are right. We've seen these guys play more on chess.com than maybe any other matchup in history.
Yes, and well, I actually have some experience from the white side of this line, not playing myself, but as coach of the U.S. women's team, I've worked with some of the players, and I won't name any by name. I don't want to ruin their preparation. But the point is, look at this knight on A5. It looks like, it's on the side of the board, not doing so much. At some point, I would like to go into the C4 square, but the knight on G1 has a much more natural route. Knight F3, knight to E5. So and there's knight f3 is played. And you see that with bishop b4, Maxime can put pressure on this pinned knight and pin it again with rook to c8. But the problem for black is after that, you can't pile up even more pressure on it. And look what Maxime does with knight h5. So, I mean, these knights in a5 and h5, he's trying to find a very direct solution to some other practical problems. But this can also backfire when you're bringing your pieces away from the center like this.
Yeah. I don't have experience in this position theoretically, other than highlighting that one of the things you can note too is that even though black's bishop on d7 is objectively more passive compared to the white counterpart, because the pawn structure creates natural play on the queen side, you've got these open lines. And so if black does get his dream kind of development, it involves rook c8. Eventually, the king is out of the center, of course, but using not just the c4 square, but even advancing the queenside pawns. And these kind of plans are supported by where the bishop is. So sometimes you can evaluate development of pieces not based on their sort of optical activity, right, where a piece just looks better in the center, but where is the piece most useful for your plan? Where is the piece most useful for your structure? So that is one thing I'll say about black's position, is that sometimes these positions can seem passive to start, but black's pieces will suddenly seem to be right where they need to be if play does get going on the queen side.
That's true. And the black king is sort of stuck in the center just for the time being, because if you can't castle with the h7 pawn now under attack. So white is actually lined up pretty perfectly towards the king side. And as you look at black's minor pieces, you have this knight on a5, bishop on b4, and this offside knight on h5 as well. So there's no coordination here for black to feel so comfortable with.
Yeah,
I would think about playing the knight back to c6 in a moment pretty soon.
I don't know. I'm sorry for giving the dramatic whoa this early, but I just had to give a whoa. Thank you, Keanu Reeves. I don't know. I just I want the light squares. That's all.
And h7 is hanging.
And h7 is hanging. It made me okay. So my immediate thought was, wait, what? No, what? No. Like, what? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't totally off the table, but Hikaru very quickly came back to g3, so he obviously knows something about the tricks here and doesn't go in for this line. But even the computer wasn't just jumping to say that it was very clear on bishop takes h7.
Yeah, but it's something that, it's just like Alireza trusted Hikaru yesterday when he shouldn't have. Here, Hikaru trusted MVL when he probably should have, because Maxime playing quickly and getting to this position likely is not just blundering a pawn and getting his king out in the open. There is complications there because your bishop and queen get tangled up over there on the H file in that variation.
Yeah. For sure, and one of the best things about coming back is that you, rather than going in for these variations trying to prove it, this pawn is unable to return safely, right? So really you're all in now with this sort of commitment, which while these pawns together are going to do some good control over the light squares, if black wants, the e5 square is forever his.
Yeah. And sorry, I was just looking as well at some of the other games in this matchup.
Just spying the board 2 battle. I think we should head over there. Fabiano Caruana and Levon Aronian have moved along here in a Ruy Lopez.
Weird position. I mean, look at these knights just diagonal from each other, and the knight on g5 and e6 are having a bit of a stare down. And white is just trying to free up this bishop on b3 because, it's not going to amount to any sort of devastating attack, nothing of the sort. But as these trades start to occur on the black king side, an eventual queen f3, bringing that queen into the mix as well, that black king starts to feel a little bit iffy. And the bishop on b7, not really doing the same thing as a bishop on b3 if that knight on e6 were to be moved out of the way. So these are just these little nuances here that white is hoping for. Not to mention, I was about to say f4, and there's f4 is played by Levon Aronian, opening the f file, trying to increase the pressure, particularly on the f7 square.
I'm given lots of woes here, and it's not because the positions are that crazy. I guess I'm just a little bit impressed by the aggressive nature that both these top boards are going with. It feels like we're going to get some pretty sharp games, and Fabiano just wasting no time, right? Making no apologies for his belief that he can get some pressure. I mean, you highlighted the queen coming to f3, Robert, and I was trying to make some exchange just to show, like, hey, if this happens, this is Robert's idea, but advancing the f-pawn is the most aggressive way to bring more pieces over here, and now we're really going to see something aggressive happen.
We are, and we're actually going to see a material imbalance as well, because now after knight takes f4, you take back with the bishop, and white has given up this bishop for the knight, but the one good thing about what white is doing here is that bishop on c1 had not moved yet. So you're actually picking up some momentum by developing your piece and getting rid of it at the same time. And look at that f7 square. That's going to be the target for Levon. And I mean, you take back on f4 with the rook. Black plays h6 to kick this knight out of g5. I don't think you can allow it to stay there for too long. And there's just long-term pressure down the f file and on that f7 pawn in particular.
Yep, Levon on the clock here, deciding how to recapture on f4. I mean, like you said, bishop takes, developing with the tempo makes sense. But the fact that he's pausing makes me wonder, is there some other move here? Like,
no, he's already recaptured.
Oh, I'm not in the live position. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think Levon's going to pause right there. That would not be a good sign if Levon is thinking about sacrificing an exchange for no good reason there.
So the capture's been made. I'm spying the board 3 game here between So and Geary, another one that is moving very, very far, very quickly. Let's head over there just to make sure we've checked in on all the boards in this USA versus Europe battle here in round 9.
Yep, and so we see this position. We know exactly which opening it came from because the 2-on-1 majority for black on the queen side and the central majority for white leads us to believe that, hey, we're getting here from a Grunfeld. And, well, we tend to like that central pawn mass, but white is a little bit underdeveloped compared to black. Your king's still in the center. And sometimes that's okay. Your king comes, up forward instead of castling to the side. But in this particular position, I mean, knight to b4, of course, is Anish's going to consider knight to e5 to trade knights. And Denny, I don't know if I feel like this is what the doctor ordered for Team USA on the white side of this position.
Yeah, but I think you would say it's probably also not. Is it really a position that has a ton of risk to lose? Maybe, I guess. I mean, it is going to be one of those unbalanced Grunfeld endings where, like you said, the long-term advantage of the 2-on-1, will it pay dividends? But I guess I always feel like with white already having the C file in these endgames that usually they're able to dictate some of the pace. If the knight moves, does black ever try for things like e6, right? You try to undermine the d pawn while it can't be defended, because if a capture has to happen, black is even putting even more pressure over here on the queen side. Interesting. So knight a5 played rather than.
Danny, I wasn't thinking in terms of risk. I was thinking in terms of match strategy. You wanted a Nishikiri in there to be solid and just say, I'm going to hold off Wesley So. And I'm just wondering, if this particular opening without the queens on the board where Anish, has some experience, but Wesley playing quickly, like, does this give Europe more chances to just hold down this board and then play for more with the white pieces?
Right. Okay, yeah, that's fair. I mean, I guess we'd have to talk overall match strategy from every board perspective and what result do you expect to happen, right? Respectively on each board. I mean, if you're Team USA looking at this ahead of time, where were you looking to get your points? I'm asking generally. I mean, it's a tough one to think about. As I'm looking through the boards, looking for Irina Krush's game versus Lagniza. I don't have it up right now. There we go.
Yep. And we have a Maroczy bind structure, which I always like from the white side. And the reason why is we get into a little more chess in this particular game is look at white's pawns preventing any of black pawn breaks, right? B5 is covered, D5 is covered. Where does black move her pawns in a position like this? And I just feel like you're always just gasping for air, trying to find a way to create some active threats for yourself.
Yep.
Whereas white's play is actually quite straightforward. You often just put your queen on D2, put a rook on D1, and then choose if you want a rook on C1 or a rook on E1 or even a rook on B1. Like, there's some flexibility to white's position that black really doesn't have, although Irina does have a lot of experience in this. And just because I may be uncomfortable with a position of this nature doesn't mean that she is.
Yeah, the accelerated dragon does take a lot of experience to get. It's not exactly a move order that was a traditional accelerated dragon. We came via this sort of Rossalimo, where C4 being played later. Now, earlier in the event, Hoi Fon played the move C4 right here and won a very nice game against Irina Krush. But Nana Zagnidze goes for the main line, I guess, still getting a Maroczy bind structure, as you highlighted, Robert. And I've played these positions on the black side, of course, and you're always slightly worse until you either lose or you eventually change the structure somehow. And okay, B5 and D5 are very hard to manufacture. The other option is to make a trade and then try to offer yet another trade so that the dark squares can just continue to be available to black. And if that becomes the case, that is the sort of the long-term asset of black's position, is that while it has much less space and is definitely worse from that perspective, if the pieces are traded, what is space really, right? And that wasn't meant to sound like existential, but what is space if pieces are traded? It can be holes and open weaknesses. So that's kind of, the reason black plays these positions is not to not to get usually some sort of advantage in the middle game, but to play for the long game.
And actually, an example of that, Danny, is if black plays knight d7 next, which is typically her plan in this position, your bishop on g7 not doing so much, the knight f6 sort of dominated. And if you can trade on the square d4 and then trade queens eventually on the c5 square, let's say, that's where you're talking about. There's some holes in white's position because of all these pawn advances. And so maybe you can take advantage of that. But I think what you said summed it up extremely well with white is sort of better until the end of the game. That is the point of playing this opening from the white side. Is you strategically are so sound. There are no real weaknesses to exploit, and you have so much more space that you just control the shots. You call the shots on what's happening in this one.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing to say that white's just better until the end of the game, and somehow black can somehow hold those positions and in rare cases win them if it's overpressed. But it is definitely no argument that white has a slight edge in these positions. So as we take a step back, of course, we'll just remind everybody that there are a lot of other games going on in the other matchups. Of course, we have Team World and Team Russia, Team India and Team China. We're going to kind of continue to focus on some of these top games between the USA and Europe because it is kind of where all the marbles are being held right now. Let's go back quickly to the board one battle, Hikaru versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Not a ton of progress there. Hikaru still on the clock deciding how to approach this position. What do you think the critical decisions are? I mean, obviously the E5 square is going to be home to some sort of white minor, but are there chances white looks to be really aggressive here and even even keep the king in the center, the idea of eventually advancing things like G4 in some of these structures that you would do like in a Dutch? Or is Hikaru just thinking about, making sure he double checks a more straightforward plan, castle short, put a rook on the C file, fill the E5 square, and go from there?
Well, part of this decision is based on which knight he wants to allow to capture his dark square bishop, because the knight on h5 is threatening to do so, but it's not really a threat. Opening up the h file with a rook on h1 can be good for white.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go bishop to e5, you make the knight on h5 look a little silly, but the knight on a5 can come back to c6 and attack that bishop. And now, no matter what, the trade for that bishop still would leave white with a slight advantage. So I wouldn't be concerned about that, but that's actually a pretty critical decision at this point.
Right.
And adding to that is what you were saying. Are you just going to castle, bring a rook to c1? Are you going to play pawn to b4? Is that kind of expansion what you want on the queen side, kicking that knight away for the time being, and then just claiming even more space across the board? So I think that's what Hikaru is thinking about, not just this move, but how he's going to continue his strategy, say 6 moves from now. And that's why this is a critical moment.
Yeah. Well, Hikaru taking a lot of time here, and not something we talk about every day, right? Obviously, he's one of the fastest players in the world and is used to pressing an edge on the clock. But I think he respects and appreciates how critical this game is for his team. Him having the white pieces versus MVL versus Fabiano having the black pieces versus against Levon, right? I think that, of course, each one of these games can be different. We see players get points from both sides, but I think he knows just how critical it is that he's the one pressing against Maxime today.
Right, because often it's not about winning the game. It's about just putting pressure on the other boards. And that is something that I think a lot of people who don't have experience in these team chess events don't quite understand, because typically in a game of chess, you are solely focused on your own game. Nothing else really matters. Maybe in the final round when you're playing for first place and you have to see how your competitors are doing, but just really it's about your own game. Here you're looking at Fabiano Caruana's game. And I think we should actually just it's a great time to look at that game, because when I look at that game, Danny, and I'm looking at king on h8, all of white's pieces trying to barrel down on that king side. Exactly, you're nervous.
I mean, I'm always nervous, but go ahead. I'm nervous for black's position here, or loving white's position, depending on how you look at it. So,
yes, because you're sitting here very passively. When you think about how can black do something of his own rather than just fending off white's ideas, you think about a move like d5, but d5 is always meant by pawn to e5. And I'm just kicking your knight away and opening up the board a little more. And I would think about, honestly, moving my knight away from f6, which sounds like, Robert, what are you talking about? It's my only really developed piece on the 3rd rank. But the pressure down the f file is about to continue. It's going to increase. And then your knight will not be able to move because the f7 pawn is behind it. Not to mention knight takes h6 sacrifices to then take on f6 and just break open and blast open that king.
Well, and as passive as it looks, I mean, knight to g8 has to be considered because it overprotects. Knight to e8 also protects g7, but it disconnects your pieces for future coordination, which I think will have its own tactical dysfunction. So knight to g8 is filling or opening the square, if you will, on f6 for the bishop. I mean, that makes sense as passive as it looks, but there's no way white isn't just better here. And this is one of those positions, Robert, that, I mean, you and I both are sort of, it's obvious in our tone. We have a feeling that white could get a really good attack here, and this could be a game where black gets blown off the board, right? And we know Levon is super dangerous and rapid, and has had a great tournament overall, despite a tough loss to end yesterday. So I think Fabiano pausing for good reason here, and don't let the computer evaluation fool you here. Yes, it's only a teeny bit better for white objectively, but this is a position that could very quickly just be crushing for white.
And, knight takes h6, as we mentioned already, on the docket for white. Just, you have to consider it. So Fabiano is probably going to burn some serious time here thinking, do I retreat this knight to g8, to h7? Like, is there a difference between those squares? And of course, there are differences just on where the knight can move next, if it's going to move. But you're creating a defensive setup now.
Yeah.
And this is not an easy choice, because you can see many plans for white here. And black's ideas are really, how do I make sure I don't lose this game, rather than, hey, where's my activity coming from? If you could play c5, c4 or something like that super quickly for black, then maybe you have some chance to actually claim I'm doing something of my own rather than just parrying off threats. But that's a long story with your king side being so open over there.
No, I think that's an interesting plan. Certainly, you would want to consider that just because it's an aggressive defensive idea, right? The whole reason you're doing it is not in a typical way where you think of a queenside racing against a kingside attack, but just purely to basically strangle away one of White's potentially dangerous pieces. I want to quickly go over and back to Irina Krush's game with Nana Zagnizi because the variation we predicted actually happened on the board. The knight retreated to d7 to offer some trades, and obviously Irina did not go full endgame offering with queen to c5. She brought the knight back to f6. But this is the kind of position that if you're an accelerated dragon player that you thought of when you went for this, right? Again, objectively, and the computer you can see likes White just by a little bit here. The space is there for a reason, but without a lot of pieces, the space can backfire. And Black's structure, if you just look at it, doesn't have a ton of weaknesses yet. Knight d5 has an idea to maybe make one. The whole point for White in this position is to make this trade so that the e file can give a long-term weakness here on the e7 pawn. But you can understand why Irina played this, right? I mean, if she feels confident defending it, it is solid. Black was never pretending to maybe be winning in an endgame, but I think she has a lot of experience and can hold this.
Well, speaking of experience, Nana Zagnizi experience to know that knight d5 is just a good move because, as you point out, the e7 pawn, that's going to become the target. And sometimes when you have more space, you're like, I don't want to trade pieces because the side with less space is typically more cramped. But here you're creating a very concrete plan and piling up pressure on this pawn e7, swinging a rook to e1, doubling on the e file, and that's going to be some difficult news for Black to meet. And if the queens stay on the board, it may not look like an attack is brewing, but sometimes you just play h4 and try to play h5, and if you can get it h6, and some dark square issues for the Black king. And that is a long story. Black obviously has moves to meet that idea, but h4, g4, the White king is so safe over here because Black has no open lines to start going after it. So I do think that Black, like you said, objectively, Black can fight this one off. But with this now practical weakness in the e7 square, it's really not so simple.
Yep. No, and it's a great point too that you highlighted. The combination of the e7 pawn being weak, also with the AlphaZero plan over here. As Robert Downey Jr. said in Tropic Thunder, always go full AlphaZero. And this is a dangerous plan for Black to be worried about. Irina Krush going to pause here to think about it. I guess we should head back to board 3 real quick.
Okay.
Wesley So and Anish Giri. A lot has changed here. White completed development, but I don't know. Instinctively, I like the transition more for Black. E6 was played by Anish, and again, this is a typical idea in the Grunfeld when White has this advanced structure because the tension sort of favors Black. Trading is almost never good, and that means the tension favors you. You can take when you want. Anish decides it's sooner rather than later for him because of the knight's kind of troubles, and opening up the center is going to maybe take advantage of the king. What would have happened here on bishop a5? I guess taking e4.
Yep.
And we go back for the pin over here on the e file.
Exactly. And king d3 would be the only way to break the pin, but then bishop b5 check happens. King d3.
Yep.
But then bishop b5 check, and you're walking right back into the pin because you otherwise can't protect your bishop. So nice tactical little motif there. But Danny, I mean, as we go to the live position with bishop a6, I understand Wesley's plan. He's trying to take over the c file, but the d pawn is really it's one that you want to call a pass pawn and an asset, but it's kind of a liability. It's not that easy to keep hold of. And if you go rook e8 check now and then bring your second rook over to d8, I mean, you're going to quickly see that pawn get in some trouble.
Yeah, and the king doesn't exactly know where he wants to be. Obviously, coming more into the fray is maybe something you'll forever regret. And coming backward can only cause dysfunction in terms of your pieces here. Putting the bishop on e3 is one way to deal with the check, but you sort of self-pin. You worry about ideas where Black can kind of continue to put pressure there. So I don't know. I'm also liking Anish Giri's opening here. Wesley not getting his best possible variation on the white side of a Grunfeld, and he's got to work his way out of this.
He does indeed. And I mean, as I look across the four boards, Danny, I just sort of like Europe's chances on aggregate. I don't really see a USA advantage on any particular board, whereas on two of the boards, I really like Europe's positions. That's on boards 2 and 4. So with the white pieces, it feels like Levon Aronian and Nana Zagnidze are pressing and doing
Right.
just what the team needs. And from boards 1 and 3, I mean, I haven't looked at board 1 in a bit, and I like Takara's position early, so maybe it's still good. But on this game in particular, it doesn't feel like Wesley's position is one where you feel comfortable or confident in his winning chances, and it really justifies Gary putting in Anish on board 3 to fend him off.
Right. Well, and we talked about that right before it started, that stylistically, I think he just looked at Anish Giri. I mean, Anish hadn't had his best event, and he would be the first to tell you that. But, these guys are the world's elite for a reason, and he knows what Anish is capable of. And here he's kind of proving good, solid prep as Black, and put himself in a very good spot here for Team Europe. So what a huge result that would be for Anish to kind of not necessarily redeem himself, but redeem the event, because the event itself hasn't been his best, and really find it here on this last day. Bishop E3 responds very quickly to Rook E8 check, kind of the only move.
Yep.
And now how do you get the initiative here before White gets a move like Rook to C7? That's kind of the whole idea of Bishop A6 in these Grunfelds, is to own the C file.
I'm expecting Bishop A4 to not allow you to play Rook to D1. And there it is. So I wanted to play Rook to D8, but then I thought maybe you play Rook to D1, and then you're protecting that D pawn in advance. So I'm thinking I want to play both of these moves, Rook D8 and Bishop A4, but why not start with Bishop A4? You can't kick my bishop out because my knight covers the C4 square from your rook, and then I play Rook to D8 next and go after the D5 pawn.
Yeah, and now when you play Rook D8, there is still lines with Rook C7 in a trade that can happen, but it feels like if that's the kind of direction the game goes, Black has to have something because of the king's awkward spot, right? I mean, I know I'm being a little bit superficial, but I'm sort of assuming that if the trade happens, that the white king gets in trouble at some point.
It's not extremely well placed. I think we can say that at a minimum, because you take A7, I take D5. I have Bishop H6 just as one example of what I can do later as Black. And there are other ideas as well. But what's White going to do? Rook to C1 maybe, but it does feel like Black is the one with a sort of initiative here, and not a comfortable position for Wesley.
Yeah, and I think Bishop H6 is maybe almost good enough in some respects that trading here and isolating the E-pawn has to be good. There's also ideas of Bishop B5 check, where the trade brings the rook over to the B file and maybe the B2 square. So, okay, these guys are going to be calculating this much more concretely than our sort of high-level look at what might happen. But yeah, it feels like Black is in a good shape here for Team Europe. So, spying some of the other games, one of the games that is most interesting to me, I just want to check on real quick, is Alireza Firouzja's game versus Sergei Karyakin. We're probably not going to have as much time spent on the top games of the other matches, everybody, as you can understand. Team Europe and Team USA are fighting for their super final lives. But this one looked a little fun, so I thought we'd at least look at it quickly and give our thoughts about it. King on G8. Doesn't look great. Hey, that rhymed. Hashtag you're welcome.
I appreciate it. And the king on G8 doesn't look great, but I think what Black is trying to claim is that the pawn structure is superior. And you may say, well, Black's pawns haven't done anything. You have this one little pawn shape from F7 to D5, but this pawn on E5 in particular is one that perhaps wandered a little too far. So if Black is able to, say, trade queens at some point with a queen E4, queen G6, or something like that, then maybe this pawn on E5 sticks out a little bit. And I think that White is doing perfectly fine, but somebody tells me that it's also totally fine for Black. And I mean, queen E4 over the king side is probably the first idea that comes to my mind.
Yeah, that's an instructive point. Not just because getting the queens off the board helps you when you feel like your king might be a weakness, but like you said, as soon as the king is no longer the main issue on the board, you start looking at other types of weaknesses, and one of them has to be the pawn here. But okay, if White somehow avoids the queen trade, I guess the goal is, and okay, this is obviously comes with a lot of risk, but if you start advancing on the king side and you've got rook lifts that can happen, your hope is to bring some pressure over here before Black can solve his problems. But yeah, the more I look at it, the more I think that that's a bit of a pipe dream and that Black is moments away, whether it be the queen coming over back to G6. Some cases you can even still play H6, and if the queen is not hitting F7, you can quickly castle by hand. So yeah, Firouzja
Danny, I was going to say queen h4. I keep talking about queen e4, queen g6, but queen h4
correct.
in one move does what
kind of
queen
like
e4,
Fabiano's queen h6 yesterday.
Yep.
Well, queen a4 to h4 is not a move you play every day, so I guess we didn't spy it. But, black offering the queen straight doesn't mean white has to take it. I mean, you can see white back up, and this was sort of my point, is that if this happens, okay, then f4, then bishop to d4, and then rook f3 and over. Like, these are the kind of positions that you can also struggle with as black. I know it's a French where you've gotten rid of your bad bishop, but it's still a French pawn structure, right? I know how you feel about that.
And that's a good thing. The French pawn structure I like, the French bishop I don't. But I also, I mean, this game, not too much happening just yet. But Danny, the Levon game against Fabiano has changed a lot
dramatically.
Since
Let's head back, indeed. All right, we have to back up and see what the last few moves were. This matchup is, of course, going to get a ton of attention. If you're just tuning in, again, Levon just went all in here to open up the king side quickly. We were talking about this position just a few moments ago. What is black going to do? Rather than retreating the knight, Robert, Fabiano makes d5 work.
And he plays d5, and that's a move that I didn't like at first, but I do tend to trust Fabiano when he is, making moves. He's the #2 player in the world for a reason. And I mean, the way this game went from here, he went e5, which was good and expected, and then he went d4. So, and you see I can see the evaluation bar drop. I don't have the engine lines, but it didn't like d4. So maybe d4 was a little bit slow, and a queen g3 type of move or something like that just first was probably what the engine is asking for. But I mean, d4, I don't know. It's clearly trying to stop c5 and maybe play c3, bishop c2, as you were saying. But it feels like Fabiano with bishop g5 was finding his way out of this.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point because d4 is a move. It's a move you want to play, right? It's kind of a warm and cozy move. It solidifies your structure, keeps the bishop on b7 blocked, and if you do get c3 and the bishop relocates, it's, right, in a perfect world, it's very pretty and very comfy, right? But it's just a little bit slow. And like you said, queen to g3 for Aroni, and maybe then bishop g5. I guess the main point is that you're just a little more direct in your attempt to just continue to bring pressure over here. I guess something like this.
And also at some point you have knight takes g7 with h4 to follow. I mean, there's so many ideas in such a position that.
So if queen g3 can't be met by bishop g5, then this is very scary, right? Because if you play a move like rook g8, I'm just assuming this just doesn't seem good, right? You removed your rook.
And I mean, honestly, d4 does look like a good move. And like I said, I saw the evaluation bar drop. So I was like, okay, clearly this is where the moment was. During a game, you don't have that knowledge, so you can't really fault Levon too much. But if we go to where the game is now, like if we keep going forward here, Levon is sacrificed in exchange. And he trades queens in a fancy way. And now there is an exchange for one pawn. And these type of positions, typically, you say, well, I have a rook for just one knight and one pawn. So that sounds like good material. But if we continue up to the live position, Danny, like, what is black going to do? That's the essential question. So on paper, you have an advantage in terms of material, but practically speaking, where is your breakthrough going to come from? Rooks need open files to be useful. And one of these knights is probably going to go into c5. So I think that, this position is still chances for both. And that's the interesting nature of exchange sacrifices is that, a knight can do things obviously that a rook can't. And here the c5 square is one of those places that a knight might want to jump to and say, your rook can't kick me out. And it's an annoying square for me to latch into.
I agree totally, right? In the exchange sacrifice school of chess from the great Armenian world champion Tigran Petrosian. Lots of great exchange sacrifices and something that I think is a dynamic part of the game. But I have to just say that said, I mean, if you're Fabiano and you're comparing this to the position you were facing back here, I mean, I don't know. I mean, sign me up, right?
Oh,
this is
sign me up 3 times over because black is better in the live position.
Here, this position felt moments away, and you and I were calling for this. Watch out, everybody! This could be a blowout. So if you're Caruana, and I'm not saying that Levon isn't holding some cards here, right? I don't really agree with the full engine evaluation that black is just better. I'm with you because of the extra pawn. Again, computers are biased toward the points, the material. White is in control of a lot of plans, but like you said, the very nature of an exchange sack is super double-edged. Black will get the rook here, and the bishop will be kind of developed on c8, where it can protect against the knight on c5. It holds the diagonal, and black wants to slowly engineer an f6. If f6 can come in, and the position starts opening up for the rooks to flex, this is a 3-result position right now.
Yeah, and I do believe that black is clearly better here. Definitely the one in charge of a position like this. But I think that we often just make a mistake looking at the material and thinking that automatically means that someone is better. Here, the material does give Fabiano the advantage. So something went wrong. Levon lost the thread at that critical moment with d4, but it's not the worst position I've ever seen, that's for sure, when you're down in exchange. The
question is if Levon lost the thread here, did the opposite happen in the board 1 battle between Nakamura and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave? Let's head back over there, because it feels like here, while we were liking Levon's chances to start as white, we were kind of liking Hikaru's chances to start as white, but this game has moved very far along the other direction. Maxime has the bishop pair, and he's pressing on the king side. Something happened here. Let's back this thing up.
And Denny, this one went from positional to attacking.
Yeah.
And Levon's game went from attacking to positional. So there's been a total mirror effect going on. And take us through it.
And it seems that the computer didn't like that after much of a delay. Once you've castled here, you're no longer in a great spot to meet knight g3, because you really loved the idea of your rook being open. And the computer really wanted white to save the bishop, I think, to maintain the balance. So when the trade happened here on g3, feels like maybe that was the start of Maxime switching gears to start spying what he might be able to do on the king side with the absence of the light square bishop. The dark square bishop for white.
You always see this kind of idea happen against this double pawn structure, because it can fortify your king side, but it also can create a more advanced pawn that's easier to attack. And what do you mean by attack? Play h5, h4, and start breaking through, crashing through on the king side. And if you go to this position here, as we keep going to the live board, just because some moves are being played, I think that Maxime is just, how could you ask for a better position? You have 2 bishops. You're starting to attack the white king on g1. You can open up the h-file at any moment. And where's white's play going to come from when the c-file is the only open file for white, but the bishops cover all the important squares over there?
Well, you just make a pound-for-pound comparison, one piece at a time. Rook versus rook, advantage black, right? I mean, queen versus queen, even advantage black in terms of the potential power. The bishops are right now, at least the dark square bishop is putting pressure where it's needed. I guess the long-term pros for white is that if you defend off the attack, let's say that this trade, as scary as it looks, if it doesn't yield anything, if this king can somehow sit cozy on f2 when that square opens up, white wants knight b5 to slowly unwind on the c-file, but I'm with you, and I think even Hikaru would agree. I'm not exactly sure what he would say in terms of where the thread happened out of the opening, but obviously some tricky footwork, as we like to say, when heavyweights battle, and Maxime got the better of it.
And I like king f7 because I was going to say that king might make a dart over for the queen side. Because for now, black is trying to crash through on the king side. And so either the king can go all the way over to the queen side as needed, or at some point, getting prepared for an end game, your king more advanced in the center can be good. But I think Hikaru is going to rely on some sort of fortress that you were talking about with hg3, fg3, put your king on f2, and say you just can't break the position open anymore, because you can't play e5 without dropping the d5 pawn. And e5 would be nice to just continue pressing forward, opening lines and diagonals. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last time we saw Hikaru in a tough spot was actually with the white pieces against Viswanathan Anand. So this is not even as bad as that was. And Hikaru, a very resourceful and pesky defender. The thing you have to be worried about, though, is not just all the X's and O's we've highlighted, but the one practical factor we haven't given attention to. I think MVL is better in the time scramble than Vichy is, and I think that if you see this time managed well, it's going to be tough for Hikaru to hold. I think only 5 minutes. I think White's position is certainly holdable and solid, but you worry about the time as well.
I have one important question for you, Danny.
Uh-oh.
like this bishop on d6 staring at the knight on f4, right? When do you actually consider taking it? Because I know my first instinct is like never take that piece, but that
Right.
knight is actually a very good defender. And by capturing it at some moment, you can either, if you take with the e pawn, then black can play h3 and open up the h file in that way. Or if you take with the g pawn, I could play g3 as black. So that is something that I honestly I have to retrain my mind to think about, because I don't want to give up my bishop. But there are some little subtleties there that can really help black's attack.
Yeah, the risk is that whenever that bishop's traded, you can never get c7 back, right? And that is the one kind of open door for white if the queen side starts to open up. But yeah, I mean, if you use your imagination, if something fun happened like takes, and g3, okay, this is like all of a sudden.
So, I think something important, Danny, is that we should not take on g3 as black until we absolutely must.
Right,
And queen
there you
e6
go.
played.
Yep.
Because now, if you waste a move, let's say you play a4, just to show that really quickly, and I play bishop takes f4.
Oh, okay.
You don't take it until you must. And the point is, if you take it with the e pawn on f4, I play h3, I believe, and I'm just crashing through the h file and not opening up your queen's defense or an escape square for your king. And if you take with the g pawn on f4, then I start with g3, and then I'm just also breaking through over here on the king side. So I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with ideas for black, as when you take this knight on f4, because otherwise I don't see a way to really crash through.
Yeah, and queen h6 is it? Whoa, a4 was played.
What? That was really just a random suggestion. I mean, maybe it's good.
Hikaru is like shaking his head, like you said, a random suggestion, and Hikaru's like, don't ever listen to Robert Hess's random suggestions. That's probably what he's saying to himself right now. Whoa, but rook h8 played.
I do see Hikaru.
Hikaru is thrilled to see that move. Wow.
So what was? Oh, you know what it was, Danny? That instead of rook h8, Maxime should have played h3
right away.
And if that way I'm threatening to break open the h file.
And if I take, you take the knight first.
Exactly.
And I'm busted. No matter how I recapture, you take with the queen, and it's lights out.
Wow.
So if h3 was played, Hikaru wouldn't even have the option to take. But that means you're playing a position like this, Robert, or something with the king on e2, right? I mean, what do you do here if you can't take?
Yeah, and this must be just losing in like 2 moves.
So rook h8 played, and Hikaru quickly puts the knight on e2. Still definitely worse, but Maxime just missed a huge opportunity there. And, we've seen a couple games now back-to-back where Firouzja missed an opportunity, Maxime does. I think Hikaru's kind of a reputation is helping him here a little bit in some ways. I don't know. People are believing his tactical defensive ideas, I guess.
And it's just strange also because Maxime has so much time. And Danny, during classical events we've covered together, I'm very critical of players not using more time when they have that time.
Right.
And it's a little bit different in rapid because you also are putting your opponent in time trouble. But, I mean, it didn't feel like the moment where he needed to rush rook h8. You could spend 5 minutes on your clock, still be way ahead on time, and then play rook h8. And, I mean, honestly, I'm benefiting from the players' reactions. Like seeing Hikaru freak out led me to be like, okay, there's something there. What is it? And then I see h3. So that is why, as commentators, it's often easier. We read body language. We get hints from the players. We can see the evaluation bar, even if we don't have engines ourselves. So, I mean, it's not like it was the simplest thing in the world, but you should spend a little bit more time there, even if you don't ultimately come up with the best move.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it's something we've seen Maxime, despite getting a time advantage. I mean, I guess just speaking of recent memory, you wonder about how to actually use it, right? And I think that he would argue, there's a lot of practical factors that go into that. And of course, he's much better at making those decisions and executing than either of us. But just, again, as commentators, seeing positions where you feel like advantages were maybe missed, and or maybe just it's like a lack of awareness that this was a critical moment. Speaking to an advantage against Alexander Grishuk from the candidates, that maybe he didn't quite convert despite a big lead on the board and on the clock. And then we talked about the game with Taimur Rajabov from earlier in this event where he didn't quite use his full time to then maybe convert against in a winning tactic that you actually spotted. And I'm just beyond it. Looking at he's not using his time here, and his advantage isn't getting any bigger.
Yeah,
and I know you're critical of it. Now you're also someone who would openly admit you use too much time, right? You often get under time pressure, but I agree with you.
It's way easier to sit and commentate because you can just throw out ideas, and if they're wrong, you take them back, and then you make a new idea. So I understand why Maxime is avoiding making any sort of decision that cannot be changed, right? That taking that concrete approach and saying,
Right.
I'm going to push my pawn or capture on G3, then you just lose out on other options. So I get it. That kind of committal decision is hard, but he still is better. And I mean, Danny, I'm looking across these games here, and Europe's chances to me still look good
dwindling
because of Nana Zagnidze.
Well, but they're also dwindling. I think Fabiano's position is getting better against Levon.
Okay, I wasn't looking at that game at that moment, but you steer the ship.
No. Let's go to Irina's game over here now with Nana Zagnidze. We haven't been here in a while. You go.
Yep. It's funny because I thought you were going to say something, and then you kind of.
I was looking at the position and your face at the same time. Those are two very, very deep things, very, very beautiful things, and I was caught up.
I was about to say, I hope you were saying they're both appealing because White's position here is clearly appealing. You have more space in the end game. The black king on f6, while it looks like it's good, it's active, it's actually, not necessarily in the best spot because if I can play, say, rook up to e3, both threatening to double, or rook to e4, I don't know where, threatening to double in the e-file and then play rook to f1 as well as rook to e1, that king on f6 is maybe not as well placed as you'd like. And White just has locked down the pawn structure. And I mean, it's one of those positions where I play the black sided positions like this and you just get squeezed and you're like, where can I desperately find counterplay? Right. Here, e6 comes to mind, but you are dropping a pawn in some of these lines because of the g5 pawn hanging, and then e6 maybe hanging, and c5 is a target. So you have to calculate these things quite deeply. But that does give black some ideas for counterplay.
But Irina takes here. The risk of that, of course, is now h6 is a serious problem, and even further, the f5 square becomes available. So I start thinking about things like rook e5. By the way, Hikaru and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave talk about a very, very quick turnaround. We have to go back and show that they have already drawn their game.
What
a surprise. Maxime, again, I think that this showed a little bit of, maybe it helps explain us a little bit further in terms of why he misses opportunity. It feels like Maxime kind of had a draw is a good result coming in mindset. Because, and again, this isn't to take anything away from Hikaru or Maxime, whatever, but there's objectively no real way to deny that a4 was a huge blunder. We saw Hikaru's reaction on camera, and h3 might have been just winning on the spot for MVL. And it's almost like, because of how quickly he played, Robert, that he wasn't even looking for the win.
And that's what happens when you give a lot of credit to your opponent. Hikaru Nakamura is an amazing player, especially as we've seen in these online events and the quick time controls. But at the end of this, it does sort of feel like White has set up the fortress needed, where you're always ready for any kind of h6, g3 by just recapturing. And where do you make progress as black? Because if you're not checkmating the white king, then White is totally fine. So I understand how after missing your chance, why you would maybe make a draw. I would still play this out because black also doesn't really have any risk here. But I guess there's no way to make any sort of progress. So I understand.
And we saw Hikaru on camera. I think he probably intended to play 92, maybe even before he played a4. And I think that was just we saw him react to playing a4 and being like, uh-oh. And now we see him in the chat. I don't think Hikaru is trash. He's saying I'm trash. He's not, but obviously he knows he kind of got away with one. A4 was not the right move order. Black misses an opportunity, and Hikaru doesn't have to be asked twice to set up the blockade. And so I agree with you. Objectively, in the final position, we're not saying MVL was better here anymore, but it was just interesting to see how Maxime used his time advantage and didn't quite press on the H-file. So,
right.
All right. Well, let's head over to the board 2 battle. We have a draw between Hikaru and MVL. By the way, those following the whole event, that means they drew both of their matchups against each other in this event. But Fabi this is why I thought when you were saying Team Europe's chances were getting better, I was going to complete that sandwich with Team Europe's chances are getting worse than we thought they were, because I think Fabiano has started to open up things for the rooks, and I know we have a protected pass pawn to go with White now, but I don't know. I just felt like the position is more open for the rooks than it was earlier. Maybe I'm missing something.
No, I think you're correct here. And White has 2 pawns and a knight for a rook. So just on paper, that kind of compensation, it feels like, hey, White should be doing okay. But as you said, things are opening up for the rook. So a5 here for black is what I'm thinking about. Because if you take on a5, then I go rook a8, I win back that pawn. And then there's a problem on c5, on a3, and e5, or all these split pawns from each other. So I'm with you, but at the same time, I'm like, I know black is better, but maybe Levon has it in him to just kind of settle down, acknowledge that you're worse, and just try to create trades when possible. So this past C pawn is sort of the hope that you can save your position. But ultimately, Danny, I mean, I'm totally with you. This is
A5,
clearly good for black.
A5 has been played now by Fabiano, and again, if you're following this from the beginning of the round, we were looking at a position earlier that seemed like it could be big trouble very quickly on the king's side, but a combination of maybe Levon missing his chances and Fabiano defending resourcefully, and now we're getting closer to a position that feels like it's going to be harder for Levon. So what does he have in mind here? Is the C pawn kind of what you have to cash in on? Rook to C3, bishop F3, and then push him, baby?
Yep. Maybe start with bishop F3. Maybe it's not important, but bishop F3 at least hits the rook on A8 and gives you ideas with C6. So, one other thing to keep in mind, and this is kind of high level stuff, but if white gives up the E5, C6, and A3 pawns for that B5 pawn, and you have the 2-on-2 on the king side, some of those positions you can still hold as white despite being down a full exchange.
Right.
So I'm just trying to figure out the best defensive strategy. It's not easy to come up with the idea, but you want to think about these things.
Yeah, no, that's a really good thing to kind of spy long term, right? If you just imagine everything comes off, but maybe a rook versus a bishop or even a rook versus a knight and just these pawns. Black is pushing forever, but is it winning, right, is another question. And this knight comes to E4. Levon's plan is actually very straightforward now. If the knight gets to D6, it not only helps the pawn, Robert, it guards C4. So a quick knight D6, rook C3, and once again, pushing him. That's kind of what Levon hopes to do here, and we'll see if Fabi can coordinate some kind of pressure before that happens.
And there's one more thing, Danny, the 96 does. It attacks B5. So black would love to play rook A4, rook D to A4, and take on A3. But then I'm going to take you on B5 in return. So that's the type of pawn trade that I was sort of alluding to, is that, I mean, you can get my A pawn and then maybe even get my E or C pawns afterwards. But if we start trading pieces and there aren't that many pawns remaining, white still retains drawing chances.
Someone said in chat that Levon has offered a draw, and indeed I'm confirming that on chess.com. He has indeed suggested that they end this thing peacefully. Interesting. Maybe trying to read what he thinks, trying to get a read, on how Fabiano feels about the position.
And Fabiano can't accept the draw because
no
if you
way.
look at the other two boards.
Well, I think coming in as black, I mean, you have a Caro with white. I mean, you never know what's going to happen on these boards. So I think that they would all tell you they try not to think about that, and because they know they're just going to be in for a fight. But now, given where it's gone, if Hikaru's draw is a good thing, then he's like, well, I'm going to get a point here, especially if he's looking over at Wesley So's game with Anish Giri, which we haven't checked on in a while, but I think we should.
Okay, so bring that one up for us, and whoa.
Yeah, the line we predicted actually happened. If you're with us the whole time, where we left it, after bishop a4, rook c7, indeed we had a trade of the a7 for d pawn. We were looking at this. And after rook c1, I had suggested ideas of maybe bishop e5. Probably the main point is that this move is coming, and so knight c6 was played to not just stop that, but come over here. But I'm not sure that was the best for Giri. Now in the live position, so has gotten kind of out of dodge. The king is, I mean, just compare this position to where it was before the rook landed on c1, right? You're really worried that that's exactly the thing that doesn't happen. And now I think So has got to be happy that the king is castled and he hasn't lost any material.
Yeah, but I think that Anish is happy that this position is just being traded off. The pieces are being traded off, with minimal material remaining, that this looks like a position where, I mean, I don't really see any losing chances for black. And Anish kind of doing his job in a position where he never really had much of the upper hand, even if we slightly preferred his position. Because if you look at board 4, and I know we keep saying that, I keep looking at the Nana Zagnidze game. That, to me, is where Team Europe is winning this match.
Okay, well, I mean, wouldn't that be interesting if you have all three draws on the top three boards and it does come down to the board 4 battle? The trade here, I guess, I agree that, well, maybe Anish didn't get some sort of advantage when we were feeling the heat for white. Yeah, black is certainly not in danger of losing this endgame, can only be a teensy-weensy bit better. So let's head over to Crush's battle with Zagnidze, as you said. the rook ending looking better and better for white. I really didn't like g takes h4. I mean, we had to quickly go back because Hikaru and MVL had just drawn their game. But I was with you that keeping the tension, I would have looked for something dynamic, Robert, just from a practical perspective of even if I lose a pawn, I would love to clear away the whole king side here and try to be down a pawn and draw the rook ending. This is like one of those positions where now you're passive. You're dealing with all kinds of weaknesses.
And add a third red mark on the c5 pawn, please, because that's another
yes,
weakness.
Sir. Well, I mean, why not go all in here, okay?
And I mean, right now, rook h3 checkmate is the threat. So
right.
Nana is thinking, can I go king takes h6? Because in the event you have rook h3 check, then I block with rook to h5. But you have to be careful then at some moment, instead of rook h, somehow get like rook c8, the b3 pawn is hanging. A lot of things are now going in black's favor. So I would not allow this kind of situation, that's for sure. I would probably play rook to e3.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which
tight.
Rook. Probably the 5th rank rook.
It's one thing in Crush's favor, or at least in her defense, is that this rook on c6 is really useful, not just for guarding e6, Robert, but it prepares b6, which, if that trade happens, that's one less weakness, and then your rook comes to b3, right? You would, when you're at this stage of a worse endgame, you're just looking to trade weakness for weakness. If you can trade c5 for b3, and anything you can do to get closer to an endgame where even if white is up a single pawn, that may not be enough to win the rook ending, and you have to be really accurate here if you're Zagnidze to convert this.
And one more thing I'll note in addition to the weak pawns is that white's pawn is more outside. So when you play g5 check, let's say, and we get a trade here, you're left with this e pawn for black. White has this g pawn. So in these endgames, if you can imagine the rook's off the board, this immediately becomes a win for white because I use my g pawn as a decoy. My king gobbles up your e pawn, and then when we trade those pawns by each taking each other's, my king is closer to the queen side and the remaining pawn. So that is something that is you need to keep in the back of your head if you're a player in an endgame. Having outside pass pawns that can be used as a distraction is often to your advantage.
Shocking. We'll stay right here with the ladies, but Yu Yangyi has won again. So big shocker. Not sure how this one happened. We'll definitely highlight all the chess moments that we don't get to break down in live fashion, everybody, during the break. So if there's something exciting and instructive to see, we will show it to you. And a quick reminder, of course, you can always head over to chess.com's live server or chess.com/events or wherever, any device you're using. Go ahead and watch the other games if you'd like. We're kind of zoned in here to this full USA versus Europe battle.
Danny, go back for one move, please, because I can see the eval bar on screen. And after king takes h6, I thought the eval bar dropped. Yep. Which means that rook takes b3 was not a good move. So this is helping us out here. Rook h3 check, and then rook to c8, and then
was it rook c8 or rook takes b3 now? Rook c8. Oh, and the idea is if g5, you're just playing king f7, and the king is still mated.
Yep.
It's kind of crazy.
I mean, it looks like there's some G7 stuff. So
yeah, I mean, you can get out of the mate, but the position is, I don't know. I mean, okay, maybe you don't trade. But
yeah, this is complicated stuff.
I mean, this is why it's super hard for them to calculate, right? I mean, the computer obviously has an understanding that rook h3 followed by this really, really cool way to take advantage of the king was best, but understandable that neither of these ladies saw that, and now Zagnidze just getting nervous about the king's position and wants to take away this mating net idea and head back to the g4 square.
Yeah, which is smart, especially when it's getting into a real blitz game at this point where she does not have too much time remaining and avoiding checkmate. Now you also can focus in on the other weaknesses for black. And the c4 pawn, the a5 pawns, yeah, they can be attacked, but the passed pawn is the essential thing in this position, right? The g pawn is more advanced.
Wesley So and Anish Giri have already drawn their game, so just to flash it real quick, you saw the scoreboard updated. They agreed, which wasn't a surprise given where that game was headed. The other game still going, of course, Levana Ronian and Fabiano Caruana may indeed prove to be the critical one. Or one of the critical ones, right? I mean, Zagnidze crush right here. Caruana, Aronian.
Well, it looks like we might get some help in figuring out what's going on, won't we?
And a little bit of explanations, too, in terms of how he sees his team's chances. So As soon as we're given the cue that we're ready, we've got the one and only Grandmaster Maxime Vacher-Lagrave stepping in. Hey, Maxime.
Hey, Danny. Hey, Robert.
Hey, Maxime.
I'd love to talk with you about the finish that just happened with Hikaru, but I think in the interest of what's happening live right now and that we don't normally have
of course. I'm obviously watching. And,
so what game do you want to talk about?
Yeah, things developed quite well since my missed win. So yeah, okay, I think Nana has a very good position, obviously. I mean, too many weaknesses for black, pawn on a6, the pawn on b7, or the h file. I mean, that's three big weaknesses because, of course,
right.
If you go rook d3 or rook d3, then rook h1, rook h7, this should be over as well. So, I mean, basically, yeah, in endgames, as always, active pieces count for something. So, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a win for us.
Okay.
And then Levon's position was a bit worrying, but now it should be, within drawing margin with this powerful pawn on c6, adding to fantasy land. Not sure exactly how, but I cannot believe that it can be worse. I mean, he can definitely lose because it's not. Fabi is an action job, but
Maxime, can he just play c7 here? It's White's turn, right? So c7.
Yeah, I thought rook c5 there.
But can I go rook a8 and?
Yeah, but then I can double on the c file.
Ah, so you're just because the point, everybody, is you can't take this pawn on c7 because there's knight e8 check forking the king and the rook. So I just wanted to point that out for everybody. But it does feel like black is a little tied down, right?
Well, I mean, I would consider keeping the pawn on c6 for now because it's supported.
Okay.
So I would go probably something like h3, just give some breathing room for my king, bring it to h2. It's apparently not a great move, but
don't trust the engine.
Maybe we should not allow rook d4. I don't know.
Rook d4 maybe.
Yeah, also knight e8, I felt this was not the end of the world, but it's true that if we could keep this knight on d6, it would be nice. So, I don't know.
Okay.
Seems like it should be all double, but this feels like the critical game because I really don't see Nana spoiling
not winning. And again,
so it's going down this road, yeah, rook c1, probably rook a8, rook c5, rook a7. With the idea of c8. This is very nice.
That'll force the bishop away from f7, I see.
Yeah. And you have to be careful that after rook c2 you have king g3 probably, and you don't get mated.
Right. My favorite thing to not happen.
You don't. Rook g5, king f4 is completely fine. And if you card this pawn on f7, obviously, the endgames are very drawish.
Yeah. And we do have 2 games left. So if we go back to the other board really quickly, Dan.
Yeah, let's go back for a second. But
this looks
like it's being converted.
No, this should be winning, but Irina did manage to find some counterplay, but I don't think she's in time right.
Time pressure, obviously setting in.
Rook e5 with the idea of rook c5 would be my prime instinct.
Okay.
Just stopping the progress of, black's rook is stuck. It's sitting as a defensive piece.
You should just not play king f5 because of rook b5, obviously, next move. But if you go f5 simply and then rook c7, you'll
push him back.
Probably over.
Okay, so.
Oh, rook d6, rook d6, sort of the same idea, I feel. And if rook d4, you can take on d4. And
rook,
taking f3.
Yeah. Oh, actually, here you can go rook d7 check because of the king g6, you have rook c7, and then black is completely stuck.
c4 would allow f5 mate.
Yeah, no, this is over.
Yeah, Irina in big trouble. Huge moment here.
Like there's rook d7, f5, and just
rook d7, king g8 will be the only move.
Then you don't even bother with the queen side. Simply you're.
So Maxime, are you feeling a little bit better now that you're watching these games finish out here?
Yeah, it was a bit frustrating because my position felt very good and I missed this one killer blow that you probably saw live. But the thing was, I was always considering h takes g3
Right.
and forever, and I was trying to make it work. It never seemed to work. And I completely forgot that h3 was legal, and then this is a way to break open on the king side. So it was a bit weird once I found out that this was a win, but I didn't figure it out during the game. I mean, I saw it right after when I got some remarks from the team captain.
How does the team captain respond to you?
Fair enough. I mean, I really should have found this. And yeah, other than that, it's a pity because I was actually playing quite a good game in the typical way to turn things around in this slab. Maybe
by the way,
back
something
to Levant's position.
Yeah, something
now.
has transitioned over here in the
okay,
game.
This is what we were aiming for now with the king going back to g3 or h2. I mean, there is
no real way for black to win this at all.
That Levant loses this.
Yeah, it's a fortress.
Yeah, but
everybody
I mean,
protects.
more than a fortress, it's just the easiest fortress you can ever get, I think.
Right.
Like here, you can keep the rooks, you can exchange them, you can be passive, you can try to bring your king up. Like h4 is fine, but you could keep your king on h2 and just wait with the bishop on the long diagonal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the other game is about to actually conclude. So if Levant is able to hold this, we see.
I was a bit so I was a bit frustrated when I offered a draw because I couldn't find a clear way to progress, and I just thought, let's offer a draw before I blunder. But of course, objectively, I should probably still keep on. But I felt like the match was going away. Then I saw that Levant's position was not was a bit more dangerous than I thought at first, and I was a bit questioning my decision. But I think it turns out to be quite a good one. So hopefully the team captain forgives me, or maybe even celebrates me for my foresight.
Maxime, I do have a question though, because going into this match is a sort of a must win, because then now you control your own destiny. Were you thinking that maybe on board 4 that was your biggest advantage, Nana Zagnidze with the white pieces, or were you just all focusing on your own matchups individually?
Well, that's what I thought, but in a team event you have to check all boards, so that's what I did continuously. I was helped by the fact that I was doing very well on the clock and also on the position, so I was sort of in control of my destiny in that game. And maybe it's still, of course, a bit of a bother that I missed this this idea with h3 at the end, but also it helped that we knew that 2-2 was not the end of the world. Like, we wanted to win the match, of course, but 2-2 is also fine. And fun fact, I think this is also a draw if black has a h pawn. When you get this king on g1 and the bishop on the long diagonal. So h4 g3, this is why Levant is going for this, I think, because otherwise I think it makes no sense to go for this, but at the same time, it's clearly a draw. So like h5 probably should be forcing it, like g5, king g4. Also king e3 could be annoying. King e3, king g5. No, I mean before, because here king e3, king g5 is.
Okay, and this is going to be a draw here because of the h pawn,
But h5, king e3 right away could be sort of a bother.
And then g5 and the king is cut off. Okay.
Yeah. So, I think it's just gonna stay from here on. I would definitely have kept the pawn on g2 and h3, but.
And it's the main worry. I mean, okay, I know it should be a draw, but the only outside chance is that g3 becomes a target, right? That somehow.
Yeah, but this is why
black gets the king
this
here.
is a fortress even with a h pawn for black, so we're not concerned anymore.
Yeah, it's very instructive, actually, because most people would probably king h3 and go forward, but then you allow the black king into f2. So an instructive fortress that Maxime has been telling everybody about. Even if black were handed an h-pawn, it's still a draw because white keeps the black king out.
Yeah,
and
the only
way
square
to
you
tag
cannot
team.
go to with a bishop, I mean, apart from, blundering the bishop, is g2, because then would be one check happens.
Yeah.
Also,
and then the
without
king
the
is forced.
h pawn, I mean, it's still possible that this would still be a draw, but yeah, here bishop e4, I guess, would be the easiest.
Yeah,
bishop
hit the
e4.
g pawn and force. Yeah, that's instructive there. This pawn on g3 combined with the light square bishop is all the blockade you
No,
need.
of course. Okay, I mean, if we're expecting that Levin doesn't lose this, and yeah, I mean, bishop g6 and h5. Once you get, like, it's easier when you have pawn to support the bishop. Otherwise, it could get a little tricky, but I mean, although with 10 seconds increment, you're probably fine, but with a pawn to support the bishop, it's just
right.
a dead draw.
Well, king of 3 was the only idea there, but even here, there's no real way to get the pawn by force because
no, king g4, you get it.
King g4, okay. Keep the bishop out of h5, yeah. That's why you're my dad, right there, because of little ideas like that.
No, but still a dead draw. So
right.
Like although I'm a bit confused, honestly, as to why you didn't go g2 h3 and just move this bishop. Like, that's what I would do in bullets.
Maxime, he wanted to show you his technique. That's why. He wanted to show you that excellent Armenian school of chess.
No, also he might have a point that at some point black gets g4 and you never know, but probably this never happens. Yeah, okay. So this
Fabiano decides it's...
And I guess that's my cue to be having a team meeting, probably. So
well, we won't keep you then, obviously.
And we try to secure the spot in the last round.
Give Captain Gary our best, obviously, and tell him not to be too harsh on you. You know, you did have the foresight of where this match was headed, apparently. So
yes, apparently.
Tell him to be nice to my dad.
Very lucky, probably.
Tell Gary to be nice to my dad. All right, Maxime, we'll see you later.
Yeah.
See you, Maxime.
Thank you.
All right, MVL tuning in there, which is awesome. And now he goes and joins team captain Gary Kasparov as they review and talk about their next match. I mean, certainly it's not over yet, but that was not the way Team USA wanted round 9 to go.
No, and as you read this graphic in front of you about the qualification heading into today, Team Europe advances with a super final with a win over USA, step 1 check, and now they beat the rest of the world team. They're in. So there's no discussion now about who controls their destiny. It's all about Team Europe. And for the USA, not only do they need Team Europe not to win that match, they need to beat Team China, a team that hasn't dropped a single match yet. I mean, I just don't see it happening for the American squad.
Well, it would be the upset of the event. Team USA now has to beat Team China. What do they do here? Or is there a lineup change? Do they throw in someone who's been sitting out and gets a chance at glory, like Eleni or Dominguez Perez? Not to say Wesley So might be the best person to take on Yu Yangyi, but that has been a board that the Team China has dominated all event. That being, of course, as we're saying, board 3. Yu Yangyi is the guy that I think everyone's talking about right now at Team USA. How do we beat this guy? Where's the lineup change coming from? What can we do? But either way, we have drama here. We have almost 19,000 of you with us across multiple platforms, so don't go anywhere. Round 10 is coming up, but Robert and I will have a breakdown of some of the games we didn't catch. Alireza Firouzja beat Sergei Karyakin in a spectacle. We'll take a look at that one. Of course, we'll give final recaps in terms of the critical moments that were Team USA versus Team Europe. Round 10 and much more coming up from the FIDE-Chess.com Online Nations Cup in just a minute. And as we return here with the FIDE Chess.com Online Nations Cup, it is our very, very great pleasure to bring on the GOAT, the greatest women's chess player of all time, Grandmaster Judith Polgar, now a FIDE Vice President as well. Judith, thank you so much for being here with us.
I am happy to be here.
I don't even know where to start. It's an honor to have you. Obviously, you have a lot we could ask you about. You're in cooperation and as a VP at FIDE, helping do some amazing things with chess. You said yourself you've been watching the event, and we know you're a very strong chess player. Maybe you have some chess thoughts. I just want to say that, first of all, as you look at what's happening right now in the world of online chess, so many huge events happening, the Magnus Invitational, this event here, right? There's more to come. As a former chess player, you look at the landscape of online chess growing. Does it excite you? Does it make you excited for where the future of the game is going and the growth we're experiencing right now online?
Well, absolutely. Actually, already for quite a long time, I was quite actively expressing my views within FIDE and elsewhere as well, that I think online chess is something has to be digged and has to be brought up as a very unique opportunity for the chess world and for everybody, for the chess enthusiasts as well as chess coaches and chess professionals. And also, obviously, I'm also very much favor in making steps and trying to move extra value for the chess in education. So it is something very important. I believe that, of course, the days we are living right now due to the pandemic, it's very unfortunate for the world. And obviously, it gives very hard time for many of the people and many of the parts in the world. But at the same time, for chess, it is something exceptional, lucky. And I think we have to be phrasing this opportunity, and all the chess lovers must be very happy that chess is a game which is more than 1,500 years old, the heritage it has, and that actually we can enjoy the online tournaments, webinars, everything so well. And I think there is a lot to be improved, but I really like the way you're doing now and I'm not only saying this because I'm on the show now, but I really like that you paid a lot of attention on the graphics and on the quality stuff. And I think there is a lot to be improved for the players, for all the technical issues. And of course, I don't want to get around on the topic of the problem as well, that the cheating is something always there. And this is the main problem of the online competition, I believe. And this is the worry most of the people have. At the same time, I believe that it's very important in the world to have trust in each other, and cheaters are always there. And offline events also, it's a very serious crisis and problems and opportunities. So for the people who want to ruin the image of chess and the great taste, and for the people who have the passion, it is a problem. But I think many of us have to do things, steps, whatever possible to do something against it. But I think for now we have to enjoy what we have.
Well, yeah, that's, I think, well said there, Judith. And, I see the sign for Chess Connects Us behind you. So you do so much for the game of chess, both as a role model, as an elite player yourself. But can you tell everybody a little bit about what you do with Chess Connects Us and how that's operating during COVID-19?
Well, Chess Connects Us is our slogan because that's how I grew up since I'm age 5, so more than 30 years, by now nearly 40, that everything connected with me, it was with chess. And we created a global chess festival, which is in every second Saturday of each October. We have an event, huge event in Budapest, but also at the same time, I'd like to encourage everywhere, every little part of the world to have their own chess event, chess-related activity, to connect to our event. So my dream is to have thousands of different locations inspired with the chess and giving some chess activity there. And this is something I think we can easily do. We just need a little bit synchronizing all of the energy we put into chess. And this year, we still plan to have it on the 10th of October as planned, but definitely we are going to move on for the online platform more actively than last year.
And you've already been doing a lot of amazing things online. And I applaud you. Of course, the Polgar Chess Festival that has grown into the Global Chess Festival has been just an amazing thing to appreciate and watch. Judith, you touched on so many great things on your opening statements there on the things we need to address, the great things about the growth of the game and dealing with cheating. And there was only one other chess thing I wanted you to touch on, which is that we've been sitting here watching probably the two best active women's chess players, right? Ho Yifan and Zhu Wenjun, who just so happen play for the same team, right? As the strongest women's chess player in history, what do you see when you look at those two, and what are your thoughts in terms of how impressed you are? Obviously, how unfair it seems at times with the two of those two, and just if you would give your thoughts on how important that's been for Team China to see the growth of women's chess in China and those two ladies leading the way.
Well, China is really killing everybody. It seems like they are really on the top of the world for already quite a few years, and this event is not an exception. It is very clear the last decade was for China in chess, and they always they had really great players, and they have a good attitude, and of course they have an exceptional training, it seems. So psychologically, they are also extremely strong. It is nice to see back Hu Yifan in action. I don't know what are her plans, how more active is she going to be when there are other offline events as well. But it is nice to see that there are opportunities for ladies, more opportunities, for example, as in this event, to see top players, ladies, to compete. I think it adds a little bit to the competition, definitely. You know exactly how I feel about women chess in general. I think we have to inspire girls, parents, teachers, coaches, in order that they should have a mindset when they see a little girl of 7 years old, very talented, then that's my dream, that the chess coach comment will be not that, wow, you can be a ladies world champion, but to have the same comment as, let's say, when you think that a boy can be like Magnus Carlsen. And I think this is very important, that not only me giving this message, but also the top lady players who I know that they fight very much, they work very hard, but I think there are quite a few messages which would be possible to give by them also. Like, I don't think they are training as much as I did, and I don't think they had such a support from parents' point of view, nor from the coach's point of view. So where to put the goals, right? And I think this is what I feel that I want to do a lot in this direction, that simply don't limit the possibilities and the dreams of the girls.
Yeah, well said. Last question before we let you go. Have to ask, do you miss it? Do you miss playing in these elite events, or are you still enjoying retirement?
No, actually, I'm very busy. I'm not missing it, because I know I was there for more than 30 years competitively, which I know exactly how much effort and energy you have to put into the everyday training to be fit for the competitions. And this is why I think I'm much more realistic than a dreamer from this point of view. And I know what it takes to be on the top. At the same time, I'm very happy if I have some spare time to follow chess. Of course, now it's even more fun. But I'm very happy to do the Global Chess Festival, to run my foundation, to do a lot for how chess can be involved in education in Hungary very actively, or more actively than we do now, and internationally. I think I can do much more on those fields.
Well, Judah, I just have one question for you left. Is, were you recruited to play in this event? Like, was there any interest? I mean, would you have wanted to play?
Actually, I have to tell you that I did get an invitation to play, moreover, a more funny request to play on the ladies board. So the person who asked me, definitely, I told him that he likes to listen. No answers, for sure.
Well, we all miss you as fans, but appreciate and agree with your comments there that what you're doing as an ambassador, just as important, more important than ever right now for the game, and it's so great to have you doing the work you're doing. So, Judith, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time, and we're going to say goodbye to you and queue up an exciting thing for all the fans. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Enjoy this world premiere breaking music video here by Huga, who is a chess artist, and we're gonna say goodbye to Judith. Thank you for being here, and be back in a few minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Judith.
Bye.
Bye, Judith. And we are back here once again with the FIDE Chess.com Online Nations Cup, now joined by a very special guest. All those of you watching were just treated to a world premiere music video by the one and only Huga, HugaMusica.com herself. Huga, first of all, great song, and tell us what inspired you with your newest and latest single here.
Hello, my friends. I am watching your screen also, so let me just do something here, exit full screen, something, because I want to be present with you. I am very delighted for this invitation. Thank you so much. And this song is my fourth chess theme song, inspired by chess. This time is a bit more personal. It has a romantic story behind it, so to say. It compares the ending of a really complex relationship with a chess game, a chess game where you think your opponent should already resign, you know. The title can be misleading because it's "you better resign," and some people say like that's not very encouraging for, you know, for someone to say like "you better resign," like you should be more in a mode to say like you should never resign, you know. But it's not meant for you to say to yourself. It's meant for you to say to your opponent, you know. You many times you want to say during a game like, guy, I'm gonna win this, you better resign, you know. But in chess, there is not much opportunity to say out loud the emotions that are going on inside you. It seems that chess is a very silent game, and very, you know, that you're behaving and you have everything under control, but inside of you there is a roller coaster of emotions. And with my song, that is what I try to express, the restrained emotions, the passion of chess inside of you. And inside of you, you want to say just, you better resign.
That's great.
Well, Huga, I am curious, and I'm sure everybody is, what is your own chess background like?
I've been involved with chess since a very young age. I belong to the Chilean Chess Foundation, and I collaborated to create the Women National Chess Tournament that is until now, but that was back in 2007. So all my life I've been in contact with grandmasters and the history of chess, and in love with Capablanca and Alekhine, you know, and just reading about all these wonderful tournaments and watching chess books and chess matches. And very close friend also with top chess players. Even though I am an amateur chess player, a passionate, competitive amateur chess player. I really also, I study chess, and I try to play as many tournaments as I can. I love classical tournaments. In the last years, I've been studying more theory and improving. And I play a lot of chess online. I'm addicted to Puzzle Rush. I am a big chess fan. So I'm trying to do with these chess songs just to make more people fall in love with chess and notice everything that is happening, because we're millions. We're a big chess family all over the world. Just as music, chess is a universal language. But I think that chess is a little bit hidden from society and from culture. And with my songs, I'm trying to do something to make it easier for people to reach out.
It's amazing. I mean, obviously, I mean, the chess level, amateur chess player or not, what you're doing is growing the game, and it's fantastic to watch. I'm a fan. I know that a lot of people appreciate what you're doing and watching your music explode all over the internet. And so on that note, tell everybody, if you would, please, where they can follow you. Obviously, we see HugaMusica.com, but anything special you want to share about where they can stay in touch? I know you also have a fan club on chess.com, but tell everybody where they can follow you and how they can get involved with your community.
Yes, my friends, if you want to listen to my previous chess music, chess songs, O Capablanca, Tactical, Isolated Pawn, Caruana, Onana, and many other songs and projects to come, you can find them on HugaMusica.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram. I'm very active at HugaMusica, on Twitter, on Facebook, like in all platforms. Now I have a Twitch channel, which I am streaming chess karaoke, and I invite you to join in also. It's my channel is also Huga Musica. So I hope that you enjoyed this new video, and looking forward to show you some more.
Huga, I have one last question for you, and it's an important one. I know Danny is always itching to make a chess song. Would you make one with Danny Rensch?
Of course I would make one with Danny Rensch. Come on. You have to work
Robert hears me in the behind the scenes making up my own lyrics about the chess show we're about to do to some random pop song of the day. But Robert, you just outed me. But thank you. I would love to make a song with you, Huga, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, and best of luck with the new song and your whole career. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and congratulations for this wonderful tournament, Online Nations Cup. It's a really beautiful graphics, beautiful transmission, beautiful commentary, and thank you so much, chess.com and FIDE, for endorsing my video. It's really, it means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Huga. That was the one and only Huga. You can go to hugamusica.com, as we said, and find out all that she has to offer. That was fun, and not something that you see every day on a chess show, but it is interesting and different, right? It's unique what she does for chess and in music as an artist. So cool stuff. So, Robert, we are going to be getting set to head into the final round. We've got the standings there on the left that everyone can see. Of course, Team China, Team Europe, and Team USA are the big three left that we're talking about. Of course, China has already secured their spot in the super final. Team Europe just leapfrogged Team USA. If you missed it, what a round it was in round 9. All kinds of drama, and now they control their own destiny. Team Europe will be facing off with Team World. The same lineup we just saw, minus Anish Giri. Jan-Christoph Duda back in. He'll be taking on Bassem Amin there on board 3. And that's an interesting choice. I think that Anish Giri almost looked to kind of prove the theory that Robin and I were talking about as far as why he was in the lineup by team captain Garry Kasparov. He was in there for one reason, which is to hold against Wesley So, and kind of taking advantage of Anish's experience against Wesley stylistically. And so now Jan-Christoph Duda back in to face against Bassem Amin.
And Danny, I mean, you see Nana Zagnidze in there. You have to leave her in. She has the hot hand. She played a great game against Irina Krush. So Nana Zagnidze going to take on a tough opponent, Dinara Savakasova. But I like what you said there about the trade-off that Gary's making between Anish as solid, maybe use them in the black pieces to hold off his elite opponents, and then putting JKD in, perhaps try to score victory with white.
And then, of course, it comes down to the next one. So Team Europe kind of shown first here on purpose because they are the ones in control of their own destiny. But if they should not get the win, let's talk about Team China versus Team USA. Obviously, it is a matchup where USA is the underdog just based on the performance of China. But hey, look at that. Yu Yangyi is not in the lineup for China. If I'm Team USA, that's a little bit of a fist pump there. I didn't want to face that guy who just can't seem to be stopped on board 3.
Yeah, he has been the superstar of this event. He has had a meteoric rise of sorts and just winning every game, it feels like. But I also note that on board 4, Zhu Wenjun is in and No Ho Yifan. So you see that board 4 decision, you're spoiled for choice. We know that both of these players are excellent, but it is interesting to note that perhaps Yifan, will she play again in the super final? I'd assume so, but we haven't seen her in this matchup.
As Zenpon said, in the words of Lloyd Christmas, so you're saying there's a chance for Team USA. And again, it does seem like, I don't know, I don't believe that it's quite the legendary Dumb and Dumber reference of 1 in a million, but it is obviously, it's a tough task for Team USA. No doubt, none of them would deny it. We know Team China is so good, but these guys have all played each other before. We know there's a potential any time when it comes to high-level chess preparation. Anything can happen. So,
Danny, I gotta make a correction here. Yu Yangyi is indeed in the lineup. Our graphic is incorrect. So just to clarify for everybody, the lineup for China will be Ding Liren, Wang Hao, Yu Yangyi, and Zhu Wenjun. So they are using Yu Yangyi. Of course, he is playing so well in this event. He gets the white piece against Wesley So. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Fantastic. Very glad you interrupted me because that is information we want to correct, and no reason to dig deeper into that storyline now that we know he is playing. So it is Ding Liren, obviously Wang Hao, Yu Yangyi, and Women's World Champion Zhu Wenjun. So we're going to take a very, very quick break here as we get set for round 10. When we come back, we will do our final previews, final matchup predictions, show you quickly a great game that, again, was Alireza Firouzja, a victory over Sergei Karyakin. We will deliver on that promise, we promise. But thanks for being with us here. Some amazing interviews with Judah Polgar and Huga, hugamusica.com. Check it out. Robin and I will be back with round 10, the FIDE-Chess.com Online Nations Cup, in just a minute. And we are back here getting set for round 10 of the FIDE.chess.com Online Nations Cup. Excuse me. It's been quite the break here. Great guests and quite the week. This was quite the game, Robert. Probably one of the most exciting games that really didn't get enough attention from us. And I wanted to start it right here where the tide just started to shift. We had talked about the position earlier where what was Black going to do to kind of untangle and coordinate the king and fix the problem? But Firouzja had a different idea in mind. As Sergey backed up, he said, no, actually my king is right where it needs to be along with the rook. And the whole direction of this game just started to shift with Black going for an attack. Pause me when you see something interesting, but when he played G5 here, this whole game became one that Sergey just didn't quite know what to do. He started shuffling the king and queen and got in big trouble.
And it's showing some great skills by Alireza to say, I don't need to play king h7 and get my rook out that way. I'm going to be active first, then bring my king into the center, despite the fact that there's so many heavy pieces on the board. He says, that king is safe and sound. Look how active my pieces are, and my opponent's pieces don't have the same room to work with. So really nicely done here by Alireza.
Yeah, and again, it's not the game that we focused a lot on because of the important nature of the Team Europe versus Team USA battle. But this might have been the game of the round, right? That gets a lot of attention later on as far as video reviews and those sort of things. Because what a just great way for him to have a heads up. Like you said, he shifts gears and brings the king back into the center and turns the king side into an attack for Black rather than white. Sergey doesn't quite know what to do. He was also under time pressure, and eventually Firouzja breaks through with this very, very nice G4 idea. Looks like they're saying taking the knight was a blunder, meaning they as in the artificially intelligent overlords that we have no choice but to surrender to. Apparently, white does have other ways to try to hold the position instead of taking the knight. One of them is king f1, keeps it a little bit more tense. The other is this very Indian move I'm looking at, b3. The idea is, I guess, if you take it, Robert, now you can take here? I don't know. I don't really like you, computers.
Well, Danny, you also don't like queens on h1, do you?
Why would you do that? It's like it's just not necessary in front of all the people here. I would say they're fans, but I don't know that they're fans. Let's be honest. They don't have anywhere else to go right now in the world, right?
I was your teammate for that game, so I am feeling the same pain you're feeling. I just can laugh about it afterwards.
Yeah, queen on h1 was the infamous chess.com loss to Chess Bra in our team match battles. But yeah, Sergey also doesn't like the queen on h1, and after h2 just resigns. Obviously, rook to g1 is coming, and if the queen takes h2, there's rook takes h4. And shut the front door is what Sergey Karyagin is unable to do. Unable to shut the front door here.
Yeah, that queen is actually trapped over there. Really nicely done for his performance there by Alireza Firouzja. And I mean, he's such a strong player. We may have overlooked it because of what we're looking at in the standings. Yep. And speaking of, I mean, we know that China is going through, but as we have just one round remaining, Europe has the clear path forward, but USA still has a chance.
Well, let's bring that up. As Robert's talking about it, let's show everybody what it will be in this final round. Now, obviously, the two bolded options at the top are kind of the control your own destiny option, especially for Europe. Europe advances with a win over the world, period. It doesn't matter what happens in USA's match versus China if Europe can get the job done and win their match. Obviously, Team World looking for a chance to play spoiler from that perspective and help the Team USA just by playing the best chess they can. But it would take a lot. They would need to draw or beat Europe. And as we can see, the USA advances with a win over China and a Europe draw or loss to World. There is the very unlikely scenario, hence why it's not bolded, that the USA draws China and advances if Europe loses. So Europe would have to lose and not draw their match. Now, you pointed out something, Robert, I'm going to let you take the wheel on at the break. That's an important thing to note about the tiebreaker that occurs in terms of total match points. So let's bring up our tiebreak breakdown and let you go through not just the rules of our tiebreaker, but also what that means for the exact scenario here for Europe and USA.
Well, you see that tiebreak number one is board points. Is how you accumulate, you aggregate the individual players' results. And right now, Europe and USA, they're tied with board points. And because Europe is ahead of USA in match points, that means if they end up on the same number of match points, then USA will just by nature of the math here will outscore on the individual boards Europe, and thus, if they end in a tie in match points, USA goes through. That means that Europe will always have to keep an eye out. Hey, can we actually draw this match, or is USA winning? And I think Europe just has to focus on their own match, do their best. They are the favorite over the rest of the world, but that's dangerous territory for them.
Yeah, and let's run through the matchups there, as you said. They need to focus on their matchup. If they get the job done by beating Team World, the rest is literally history. But if they draw, let's talk again, Team China versus Team USA. If they draw and Team USA wins, that is enough for them to leapfrog because, as you pointed out, by definition of the math, if Team USA wins, they have gained more total board points and they would leapfrog them. So you and I are going to be acting like leapfrogs as we jump all over the map here because all 8 games between these two matchups, China and USA and Europe and World, are going to matter to us. So we're going to do everything we can to follow them super closely. Of course, the third matchup and the first one that's actually getting underway is this particular one between Russia and India. Not the most critical matchup of the round, but remember, of course, it's still high-level chess, and if there's a great game there, we will spy it and maybe show it to you when we can. But I think we got to start here. We've got the board one matchups, right? Dingli Ren versus Hikaru Nakamura as far as the board one matchup of China and USA, and then you have the beast of Lyon, as he's known on chess.com, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Teimour Radjabov.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to focus on these 8 games, as you pointed out, Danny. And when I think about these lineups and I think about first the USA versus China match, I'm thinking about board 4. It's always coming down to Zhu Wenjun or Hou Yifan. In this case, Zhu Wenjun taking on Irina Krush. Just, that's where your advantage is. And for the Europe versus rest of the world, I mean, that's, again, it's more of a toss-up on board 4, but the higher boards favor Team Europe.
Of course, there's tons of other games, too. We'll just quickly flash them. Levon Aronian is taking on Alireza Firouzja. I mean, this is Team World versus Team Europe, and this will also be absolutely huge if Firouzja is somehow playing spoiler here as white and upsetting Team Europe. That's not what they want. Fabiano Caruana, going back to the old number 1, as they say, he is the world's leading expert on the Petrov. But guess who might be number 2 right behind him? Or maybe number 1, depending if you ask him. Wang Hao.
Wang Hao, Yu Yangyi, the Chinese players, they love themselves a good Petrov. And, well, they often have Fabiano Caruana and his team to thank for some of the new lines that are dug up. And we look at this position. White has these double C pawns, which to some say, hey, doesn't Robert always say a pawn's best friend is another pawn? So these double pawns probably aren't good. But you do have a semi-open D file, some pressure down the D file. And if I can eventually play C4 as white, then this pawn on D6 becomes a target. And not to mention some kind of knight G5 with some pressure on the black king side as well. So I typically like these positions for white, but Fabiano Caruana, let me ask you, Danny, do you think there might be a moment where he just like, wait a second, I played this from black side as well. I kind of like it for black.
What I will say is there's going to be moments where we have to reference all the different games Fabiano has played as black and white, right? Now, we will, in a rapid affair, not have a ton of time to give you an opening theory lesson here. But if anybody's curious, I mean, I'm pretty sure this exact position did occur in the 2018 World Championship match between Fabiano Caruana and Magnus Carlsen, or at least something very similar to this. I mean, you and I feel like we were just talking about a couple games in this line from the candidates. So, I mean, you already highlighted one of the key features, right? Will the pawn get to C4 and make D6 weak? Does the pawn on C4 get met by D5 and black fixes all of it and opens up more lines? Queen A5 is an idea. As you said, knight G5 is an idea here, and that could be something black worries about with all the tricks that come. But, Wang Hao taking a second to think because he knows that even just a subtle move order difference here, Bishop F4, not the move Fabiano has played every time in this position, is enough for him to make sure he pauses, and now he decides D5 to try to hold back C4. So, sorry I didn't quite answer your question there, partner, as far as does Fabiano want to be black? I don't think so, but I know that Fabiano, in Fabiano, I trust in these positions. I'll say that.
But in Wang Hao, I also trust. So
you know what? I feel like if I don't disagree with you at all. We are on the same page. This is gonna be a theoretical battle that everyone pays attention to.
And look at this. We saw knight G5, bishop to G4, hitting the rook on D1, and F3 closes off that bishop. And white often wants to go for G4, H4, pressing those pawns forward because you've castled on opposite sides of the board. That's a dynamic that we can't look past. And look at this bishop to D7, trying to make a claim, I guess, the knight on G5 is not in a good score. But, hey, is there some kind of bishop H7 check right now or knight H7?
Dirty dog. Dirty
So-
dog.
Just go knight h7
Let's do it.
and just take on h7.
And you take
on-
a d5, and in the end you have queen h5, so the bishop can't move because down goes the first lady.
Wow. What
Wait a
is
second.
happening?
Is this prep by Fabiano or a blunder by Wang Hao? Because now
I think
he's
it's
paused.
It's a blunder.
It's got to be a blunder, but it's also showing that these are the leading experts here. And again, I kind of smelt a small rat when Wang Hao slowed down on bishop f4, just at least to say that this was clearly at least a move order he wasn't ready for, because these guys don't pause and think in the openings that they're the best at for no good reason, because they know they'll need their time later when the novelty is eventually uncorked. And then he plays d5, and I wonder if that was a mistake, because by the way, on f3, what were you going to do? Play bishop h5 and allow the pawns to come at you with tempi? I guess he was nervous. And now Fabiano might be winning on the spot here.
And I wonder if Wang Hao mixed up his lines or what's going on here, because this just looks like a big problem. Just take that pawn h7 and you get away with it.
This is crazy. I mean, I was already going to say before the confirmation, if there was a blunder, that if you were just taking an objective step back and saying, well, you know your team has to win, would Fabiano say, I'm happy with the opening I chose? I think yes. And then all of a sudden that eval bar, we see that, +2 according to the engine started to creep up. I'm like, yeah, regardless of the practical factor, let's get concrete up in this.
I'm in shock because I never expect Wang Hao of all people to blunder in this way. And I mean, does Fabiano not see it? He must see it. He's probably
he's just
triple checking.
confirming. There's no way he doesn't see this. He's confirming and double checking. He also has a small time advantage. We're not going to go anywhere until Fabian corks this, but I'm spying these other games. Again, if you're just tuning in, you can hear the hype in our voice. Oh, man, I am excited for round 10 here of the Online Nations Cup. The USA has to defeat China for a chance to move on to the super final, and Fabiano is trying to lead the way right now.
And, our daily question was, what will it take to beat China in the super final? It might take a blunder from Wang Hao on move, 15 or whatever move we're on. And, it's scary how good they are, but this is what happens. You make an oversight, and if your opponent punishes you, it's over. And Fabiano is so concentrated. I thought his camera was frozen for a second.
We see the young international master Christopher Yu hanging out in the Chess TV chat. You can head out over there and hang out with some title players if you want, fans chatting on YouTube and Twitch. But Christopher Yu says, and I think he's right, that Fabiano is actually calculating the difference between bishop takes h7 and knight takes h7, because knight takes can be met by rook e8, and maybe the attack, obviously white stole a pawn, but the attack isn't rolling. So he's wondering whether he can justify the forcing move, the check, right? And in a line like this, though, there's still rook e8 at the end of it, but then there's this move. And so I think Fabiano's thinking, because it's kind of messy, right? He's trying to make sure he executes the right way.
And it's a good point, and it's one that we criticized Maxime on in the previous game, although Maxime came on the interview, he's like, it just never came to my mind, which happens. We all have these moments in chess where there's an idea that just really just doesn't come to us, and we're after the game like, of course I should have seen that. But
right.
Here, Wang Hao looks like he's seen it, because he looks very unhappy.
Yeah.
And we've seen him in this pose for a while, and just like, how could I make this mistake? The good news for China is you've already qualified, so your place is safe. But
right.
Let me ask you, Danny, would you rather play Team USA or Team Europe if you're the Chinese team?
Oh, wait, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?
I'm not at all suggesting that, because that would not be okay. I'm asking you just generally speaking.
Okay. Well, I mean, okay, like I don't think I was implying anything super unethical or subterfuge. I mean, you talk about an NFL and other things. People talk all the time about who
Danny,
they really want to.
Look at the move. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I know. I see. He doesn't see it. Whoa! Look at Wang Hao and how happy he is. Look at that. He just like leaned back and grabbed a Gatorade and said, "This almost blunder is brought to you by Coca-Cola," or whatever he's got there.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my gosh! Fabiano misses. Holy cow! To use the totally PG term that Christopher Yu just said in the Chess TV chat. I'm not going to drop the holy bleep I wanted to say. Okay, again, knight takes h7 is winning. It's winning, ladies and gentlemen. We're not kidding. It's winning, and I'm not kidding. I'm a poet, and I didn't know it. c4 by Fabiano. What in the world?
I don't know what to say, because it was just available to him. I mean, now Black can even play d4, and all of these knight h7 ideas are out
and
the
the
window.
whole it's gone. But the whole tactic was based on d5 hanging, everybody. Whether you take with the bishop or the knight, the point is this works because of this. Because the d5 pawn is hanging.
I mean,
I am
very
shocked
surprised
right now.
And white is still better here for the record. You know, the bishop on f4 is good. By playing d4, it's very committal, as it tends to be when you have pawns in d5 and c5. Whenever you push a pawn, it gives me the e4 square, for example. But Wang Hao was the happiest man alive to see that move c4 played.
Boy, was that a natural reaction. We saw a gamer there. He leaned back like I do after saying something, you know, awkward that I'm going to regret. Happens about 10 times in a show, and I lean back and take a sip of this mug. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Hikaru and Ding Liren here. Speaking of awkward.
This position doesn't look that easy to assess because there's a lot of tension on e4, on f5, on d4 and e5, pawns aiming at each other, and the open f file, if Hikaru can get that rook free to put pressure maybe down on the f2 square, for instance, that could be good for him. But it is risky strategically to play a move like f5 because some of the light squares on your king side become more vulnerable.
You know, but Hikaru has to play for, or at least a spicy position, right? I mean, losing to Ding Liren would be not ideal, but I think that every one of these guys came in with a bit of a, hey, we got to go get him. And obviously Hikaru choosing the most aggressive possible option in this position, which is to open things up. And like you said, the risk of being in a must-win situation is you may be more likely to lose, but I think that's why Hikaru played this idea.
And he's a very strong tactical player, of course. But strategically, I just always worry about it. Maybe it's totally fine. And Ding Liren is just trying to figure it out. But I don't see the exact move here, Danny, because the tension, right? That is what this position revolves around, is this tension where it's like e takes f5 for white, black takes with the knight on f5. You can see a series of trades on f5.
If you keep taking, like, I just want to take it all through. I mean, there was also taking on d7 first as an option, but what, Robert, help me.
Well, you could take on d7. I actually was thinking
I know,
about
I'm
that.
not sure which one's better.
But if you take on d7, I take with the bishop on d7, I think.
Okay, to avoid the pin.
And now after DE, you can't take with the knight on e5 because f2 is hanging. And you can't take with the rook on e5, but then I'm guessing some kind of bishop c6 and your knight's sort of pinned. And
there's even things with queen f6, by the way, in some weird position. No, not right away because of d7, but I was looking at some weird development thing if you could get really aggressive. But okay, just
bishop takes h3.
What?
Instead of bishop c6, there's also bishop takes h3, I guess.
Ah, right. Okay, there you go. On that note, because the queen is hanging, and if you take here, you take, and the knight is capturable at the end of the variation, and black is actually just winning. So like you said, Hikaru is a great tactical player, and he feels maybe in a practical scenario where he needs to get a win, and it is a rapid game that he needs to bring the heat to Ding Liren.
And he's probably anticipating takes, but we'll see if it will result in a GG, yo.
Look at you, speaking fluent Twitch, making the fans happy. Okay, there's another matchup going on. Let's not forget that they control their own destiny. As we back this thing up, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in a very just equal balanced game. You know, they're in a better position because a draw for them still forces the U.S. to beat China, which is going to be tough. So not that they don't want to beat the world, but they definitely don't want to lose. And so this is a matchup that we'll keep our eye on. We also have Alireza Firouzja taking on Levon Aronian. We'll check back on that one in a second. I'm spying all the games here, partner. If you see something you want to throw to, just say the word.
I'm looking around as well, trying to figure out which game we should stay on. And I see one result in the books is between India and Russia. Those teams are eliminated. So, Hari Krishna.
I saw it, and I didn't even want to bring it up on the board. But Sergei Karyakin has already drawn his game with Pentala Hari Krishna.
Okay, we have to bring up the game between Dinara Savakasova and Nana Zagnidze, because unlike the previous round, Nana Zagnidze is in big trouble right now. And is Savakasova about to play spoiler and allow Team USA into the super final? Because, I mean, Danny, that game is looking really bad for Nana.
I'm attempting to find it right now. I'm sorry, there's a whole lot of games going on, and I did not have it pulled up. Remind me of the username, and I'll just do it the old-fashioned way.
It's, Dinara Savakasova, is it's a long name, so you're gonna have trouble spelling that one.
What about Zognidz's username?
It's LILI_ANI, and I cannot believe I'm reading out usernames to you on a live show, but that's what happens when there's so many games going on.
Stranger things have happened, and
3 seasons of
it apparently have happened. And shout out to Winona Ryder really turning that career around.
And you look at this position, and
I'm sorry. Okay, wow.
Yeah. Well, what I'm looking at is just rook takes f6, because I love sacrificing the exchange, one of my favorite things to do in chess, but knight d5 to follow it up, and the king is still in the center for black. I feel like it's a very straightforward attack.
Right. If the queen comes with check, you just move the king, and black has not solved any problems.
And there's also b4 ideas. For example, bishop e6.
Oh, man.
b4.
Queen runs out of squares. I mean, you could play knight b6. I don't even know if I want to, right? Because other moves are also good. But yes, certainly knight b6 looks great, and you can take a8 and win d6 and probably be doing just fine. So she's pausing. How did we get here, Robert? You said Sadukasova is going to be doing Team USA a huge favor if she slows down and beats Nana Zagnidze. But what happened to get such a weird position? We have a Taimanov Sicilian, still all theory so far. Bishop to d6, one of the more tricky lines. f4, knight d4, queen d4. On e5, okay, now we're already getting in a weird position where black has to be super careful. I don't know the theory anymore, and I'm wondering if it's because it's maybe not the best line. I don't know, but I'm already liking white.
But maybe this is theoretical, and I'm overestimating white's chances, because somehow, I mean, to me, that exchange sack is so natural, where I'm just taking on f6, knight d5. But as I look on the screen here, I can't see exactly what the eval bar registers, but I mean, what it seems like it's saying it's good for white.
I think it's very good for white. I think that this e5 idea is often a response in like a Scheveningen Sicilian pawn structure if you can get away with it and keep a piece on the e5 square. But it often happens later when you've maybe got a pawn on d6, bishop on e7, and sometimes you get e5, it slows down the attack and you land with a knight on e5 or something. I'm kind of pointing out, just sort of in a general way that e5 is a positional strike back to this advance. But in this particular line, again, we'll have to check theory here, I guess, because rook d1 was played instead of the exchange sack. So apparently either we got things that are being missed or there's something about this we don't know. I still think white's better, but certainly not as good as that exchange sack was looking.
Although I guess just the safe and sound method is good too, going after d6, because if you ever bring your king up to protect that pawn, then I'm certainly thinking about sacking my exchange on f6. So I think that black is just going to be worse and suffer in this one.
Speaking of safe and sound, though, we got to back up and take a look at Yu Young-Yi's game versus Grandmaster Wesley So, because it's one of those positions that looks very safe and sound for white. It's close to equal, of course, but it also just it already feels like a 2-result position for Yu Young-Yi in this Ruy Lopez Berlin, a structure that can also occur out of an exchange French and a Petrov in a lot of ways. But Yu Young-Yi back on camera, struggling to relay the message from Naboo that the Republic is approaching.
Well, it does seem like it's just an even game. It's a symmetrical pawn structure. White's knight is doing well on c5. And in fact, sometimes you want black to play b6 to try to kick it, because that allows me to play a takes b6 and make my rook on a1 look more useful and weakens the light squares on the queen side. So whether or not to play b6 for black is a tough question, but I guess white answers by playing a6 himself.
He plays a6 because he wants the a7 pawn to be a long-term target. But this is interesting. The point is that if you take everybody, the queen is overworked. She has to guard f5 and the b pawn at the same time. So taking would be a huge blunder, as you can see. But black doesn't have to take.
So what would you do? Just move your knight away or something?
Yeah, it's hard because you're threatening to take on d6, and I don't have a square to move my knight besides e4, but maybe I can, actually, now that you suggest it.
Oh, what a move and what a concept with a6, knight b7. Did not come to my mind at all.
And it may be because it wasn't the best. I mean, it's super, super tricky, right? But by the way, knight e4 played by So, quickly responded to with rook e1, where the threat is f3 from Yu Young-Yi. The idea is the trade here. would weaken c7, and this is being played so fast by Yu Young-yi. There's no way this position has been known by prep, but I feel like something about this concept feels almost Alpha Zero-ish in terms of how I don't know. I mean, I just feel like he feels confident that he can make this work, or he wouldn't have gone for it.
Yeah, and he can expand on the king side next with some kind of G4 or F3 G4 in any order, because you can't take on G4, I don't think. But the point is that maybe he's looking to expand on both sides of the board and say, hey, I just have a spatial edge here, and though it's a symmetrical pawn structure, my knight on B7 at some moment it might get out of there and it'll be tricky for you to deal with.
We got to go back to Fabiano Caruana's game because the eagle has landed. Bishop takes H7 is on the board, so whether it was missed before or not, I don't think we were wrong. Maybe there was even more to the struggles for black here than we realized. Again, if you're just tuning in, everybody, the drama was real when Bishop D7 was played here from Wang Hao, and you could see, like, wait a second, we were screaming for this. Fabi doesn't play it, but still manages to kind of manufacture the attack over here, bringing pieces over. And once the queen lands on F4, the threat has been renewed, because after Bishop D7 takes, captures would be losing on the spot to Queen H5, where you can't defend mate and Knight F7 with a fork. So Bishop takes H7, met by King H8. And Fabi's looking fantastic.
I guess that old adage, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And he wasn't going to be fooled the second time. He took on H7, and right here he's up a pawn. And the only hope that I would say black really has is if the queens get traded and you're only down that H pawn in an endgame, you have some chance to survive. But look what Fabiano is doing. He's just pressing forward.
Yeah.
He now has not only an extra pawn, but great attacking chances. And he's looking to score this point for Team USA.
Wow. So we got to take stock now, right? We're gonna back up and do a quick kind of just check in on every board, because this is what USA needed. If Fabiano is gonna win this game, let's go over to Hikaru and Ding Liren real quick. We'll flash that board. This is gonna be a crazy one, but Hikaru looks to be holding his own right now. The game between Zhu Wenjun and Irina Krush hasn't gotten a lot of attention, but that may end up proving super critical, because whoa. Irina Krush has a great position here.
I mean, you just like the central pawns. And I've seen this in some high-level games that I can't remember who was playing, but these sort of ideas, I feel like there was a Magnus versus Wesley So game like this, if I'm remembering correctly. And yeah, these kind of lines scare me from the perspective of the black side, because I look at the strong center and also the bishop on B2. If I can eventually push my D pawn, that bishop has the scope of the board's longest diagonal, and so this could definitely go Irina's way in the near future. That said, black still has some chances here. An eventual H5 to H4 type of move. You know, if I go knight to C4 and I worry you that I'm going to capture on B2, that could change the nature of this game as well. So it's a dynamic position where white surely is to be preferred, but it's not so clear cut.
Yeah, it's weird. So white obviously preferred because of the big center, like you said, the space. But knight e5, I mean, just pointing out the obvious, everyone, the d pawn is pinned. That's why the knight is not hanging. You cannot take here without losing the queen. And as Robert said, that means there must be a queen move right now. It's just a question of where Irina wants to put her. And then likely knight c4 with tempo. Something like, I mean, I want to do things like queen to b3, but I feel like that's maybe just a little bit too much of a Danny move, fantasizing about checkmate over here. Maybe just sit tight on the position, okay? Knight c4, and you just kind of sit tight. Bishop a1 or bishop c1.
Yeah, the pawn a3 is totally irrelevant to the actual position. So this position looks good for white, but Danny, I mean, I hate to draw our attention away from this game, but Fabiano Caruana looks like he's just a move or two away from winning.
Wow, okay, we're heading back. Fabiano putting on a Petrov show, right?
Yep.
This is a statement, right? Now, one thing we didn't talk about, we highlighted this in other potential FIDE candidates' upcoming matchups. Have Fabiano and Wang Hao played yet with with this particular color setup? They've played, obviously, but has Fabiano gotten white yet against Wang Hao?
I'm trying to rack my brain. I'm not remembering, but what I do know is that Wang Hao just resigned, so the game is officially over.
This has been absolutely crazy. So did we just get some candidates prep that Fabiano was willing to bust out in order to help save Team USA's chances? Because, again, just to give the high-level review, everybody, these are the two best, most leading experts in the Petrov defense. But Fabiano just flexed on his approach here as white. Maybe didn't even play the most straightforward way, but this tactic and the attack was unstoppable. And he may have just played the game of the day. Goes absolutely bananas over here on Wang Hao's king side. And Wang Hao resigns in lieu of king to g8, just going to be met by just take f6 and crush. Looks good.
Up 2 pawns with an attack. Yeah, that's an easy one. So not a good one there for Wang Hao, but China still clearly the #1 team in this tournament. But let's see how maybe it's Team Europe's doing, because we have given USA all the attention. But you know, if they win, it doesn't matter if Team Europe wins.
True. I just flashed the board here between Dingley, Ren, and Hikaru Nakamura. Obviously, lots of critical stuff going on, but I agree with your call. Let's head over to Alireza Firouzja's game with the Lemon Aronian. We highlighted it as a key matchup, obviously, especially if Firouzja can play spoiler alert. I don't know how you play spoiler alert, but you can play spoiler. Spoiler alert, you can be a spoiler. He's trying to do what he can, but Levon's position looks very solid.
Yeah, it's one of those positions with the 2 bishops for white, and you're trying to play on both sides of the board. But as I know full well from watching Hikaru Nakamura's games and being on the losing side of games against him in Blitz, when you have these knights and you just have a c4 square under your control, it's just, you know, not allowing white to mobilize on the queen side. So that a4 pawn is a long-term weakness, where black at some point would like to play pawn a5 himself and then play pawn b5 and create an outside pass pawn on the queen side.
Yeah, it's a really great point that it is also long-term. If you do it too early, then maybe you give white weaknesses to target. So it's a patient game. Bishop e6 maybe being played to put the bishop on f7. White has a small edge objectively, I guess, because of the bishop pair and kind of the space. But I agree with you. A lot of the long-term factors say that black is a rock, and this is going to be really hard to break down.
And Team Europe's chances are not looking good, because I don't see a single game where I can really claim an advantage for them. And I can see some tough position for Nana Zagnidze. That board is really where I'm...
Yeah, let's do it. We'll head over there. I mean, Nana Zagnidze was the hero in many ways in the last round. If you're just joining us, she defeated Irina Krush. But in this round, she's not looking great right now. And what a storyline that would be. China has not lost the entire event. Team USA already up 1-0 because of a brilliancy here from Fabiano Caruana. Wow, crazy stuff.
And in this particular game, white is simply up a pawn right now. So that d6 pawn did fall. White is up a pawn. Black's king is in the center, which in some ways can be good because we're getting into an endgame. But it's a position where white can play risk-free chess and essentially try to do what Nana did to Irina Krush earlier today. So the roles have been reversed, and now it's Nana on the defensive. It's not a lost cause. I would actually argue that, you know, let's say you can think about taking on g4 right now and taking on e5, and I'm not positive about how this one is going, but I see this rook on d6 being active. I don't know if I can get away with rook takes g7, or if you have knight g6 to follow and my rook gets trapped there. So there's a lot more, I guess, than immediately met the eye. But yeah, maybe actually knight takes e5 is a saving grace for Nana there. Actually, this rook is in trouble on g7.
Yeah, unless you can get away with, like, just all-in pressure, right? Rook c7, knight e4, or knight
king f8.
Yeah, knight d5 has to be played because knight e4 is too slow. I wanted to come to d6. So rook c7 would have to be met by this, but then you go here. And then, wait, then you have this, like, crazy idea of taking maybe, and then knight f6?
Yeah, but I still have king f8, and your rook on g7 is a goner. So, I mean, there are tactics, of course.
Yeah. No,
it's feeling better for black now that I'm actually analyzing it instead of talking broader strokes.
Yeah, the concrete details feel like Zagnidze is maybe in a potential to hold this. Obviously, Sadukasova is trying to make sure that... wait. No. Sorry, I'm not in the live position. Now we've caught up. Knight takes e5 has been played.
Okay, and if Zagnidze can hold this, I mean, Team Europe still looks like they need to win their match, because if they draw and USA wins, then USA has more board points. So it's sad for Team Europe that the onus is still on them to score a match victory.
Right. Yeah, a drawn match, assuming that USA might be able to hold. And the advantage of a victory so early from a guy like Fabiano, Robert, let's talk about that, because that sets the tone for your match. I mean, you basically just sent the memo to the team, just draw your game and we win the match, right? I mean, Fabiano's win this early is it's more than just a victory, right? It's the fact that it actually helps the strategy, because everybody else is now playing for 2 results.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't even know where our attention should be, because I'm looking from game to game. I'm looking at Hikaru's game. I'm looking at Wesley versus Yu Yangyi. It's hard because we have to look at so many games at once, because every single point is critical here.
Yeah, well, we are likely about to be joined by a super special guest. So we're going to stay right here and try to figure out the depth of this game before we move on. So if Dukasova has a way to keep pushing, do you think it's with rook takes g7? Or do you think she needs to swallow the pride and say, you know, I just lost the pawn back, let me just forget it, centralize, and, you know, be a little bit better, but no longer really playing for a big advantage?
If I can extricate my rook, then rook takes g7 is a good move. But to my eyes, immediately, I don't see how that rook gets out. But is there some kind of rook b6 move, just planning to give up the exchange and take on b7? That's also an idea that comes to mind. But I don't believe in it. And even king f8 there, just trapping the rook.
Yeah, king f8. No, I think it had to be the line I was looking at earlier with rook f6. And then we'll see if she has something on rook c7. But we'll have to come back to that, because right now we're going to see what the man of the hour has to say about this game. Fabiano, first of all, we're going to kind of break rules here and back up a little bit to show a game that's already done instead of the live games, because you just set the tone. I mean, I think more than just the match, the victory you just got, you basically gave the team a chance to now play for 2 results, right? Even if they draw every game from here, Team USA might do the improbable. So how you feeling right now after that big win?
Yeah, and this was an incredibly lucky break, especially since it happened so quickly. It really, I think, takes the pressure off my teammates. And looking at the games, I think that we're in excellent shape, because Hikaru, I think, is completely fine. I think Wesley is at least completely fine, and Irina is probably better, which is a big one as well. I mean, I can't imagine that White risks anything here, and definitely has chances for an advantage. The only risk is that, of course, if she gets too ambitious, it could get double-edged. It could turn around. But since she knows that our team is up, then I don't think she'll do anything too risky playing for a win. And the other boards are quite safe as well. So this is amazing.
Any one of us could ask questions here, because you had us on the edge of our seat in this position already. And I have to ask, you said you got incredibly lucky. Is that because, did Wang Hao just fall into some prep that you've had here? I mean, how early did you know that this was just a great position for White?
No, well, the thing is, I feel a little bit silly, because Hao played this against me in the candidates, this line. And so I know this line pretty well, because I played it against Magnus in the World Championship match. It was our prep for the match. And so there's a lot of old ideas from 2018 that I have, and before the game I had to choose one of them. And all the ideas are sort of, they don't give White an advantage, but they're all kind of tricky. And this particular one, with bishop f4, is very easy not to miss an analysis, because the computer just doesn't show it, and the reason is because black is probably better after bishop f4. But it is very complicated, and he, I think, went wrong immediately with bishop g4. He had to play c4 and kick my bishop back.
So there you go. You're answering it. So, and you know, it's funny, and not to toot our own, but we had a feeling, because when you played bishop f4, he paused and took a couple minutes, right? So something kind of smelt fishy, that at least he wasn't expecting that move order, and you just revealed that we were right, because it's not good for you, right? And apparently he didn't know the idea. And so as soon as he played bishop g4, were you starting to get a little bit excited here? And by the way, why didn't you take h7 right away? Will you teach us this? Because we thought it was good.
No, I just didn't. Yeah, this just seems to win on the spot now.
Yeah, that's what we were looking at, and we thought that you were just considering it, making sure, triple checking, and then you played c4, which gives you still a great position.
Yeah.
But you should have seen Wang Hao's reaction. He like threw himself back in the chair, took a swig, and was like,
Yeah.
"I still have some life."
Well,
No,
you ended
this
up
is
converting a great
incredibly-
attack, but let's get your opinion on the live game here, because it just got crazy between Ding
Whoa.
Liren and Hikaru Nakamura. After the move, rook takes h6. Whoa, queen f5 already responded to. I guess, okay, just to point out the obvious, everybody taking is the reason why rook takes h6 was played. That would be a problem. But
So
actually,
he
as you
blundered,
said,
yeah?
Fabi, Hikaru was fine. If queen f5, we might get an opposite code bishop ending here.
No, but this is not a fine endgame. I mean, he blundered h6, I guess. What other explanation is there? Because it looked fine just before. Like, what was his move before?
He played king
Obviously.
g8 on the check, so we're going to back up until you see something. Maybe
Ah,
a4, wasn't?
wait, a4 maybe was a big mistake, allowing rook e6.
Ah.
Yeah, he probably should have played something like rook. I know, but a5 is also hanging. So yeah, maybe there was some issues.
It
After
just
rook
feels
e6,
like White's queen and bishop are teaming up faster than Black's, bishop on c6 on g2. So White has a little bit more sustained pressure. But Danny, as we go to the live position and we go forward here, then we see that Black is trading queens. So Fabi, how do you assess Black's chances to hold a pawn down rook and bishop of opposite color ending?
I think this particular one is really not fun for Black. Okay, let's say he takes. That takes on a 4 rook g6, rook f7 will get something like this. And then White has to try to advance. But maybe you can't really hold this construction so easily. I guess White will start with like h4 or something, Black will play king h7. And then h5 or rook g5, something like that. And Black will probably try to disturb this rook with bishop e4. But I would say it's 50-50 if he holds this.
Got it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, Fabi, your team's result sort of becomes irrelevant if Team Europe is able to win. So are there any games in that matchup that you sort of have your eyes on or are worried about in particular or happy about in favor of the team from the rest of the world?
Well, last I saw it, Sadua Kasava was up pawn for absolutely nothing. Now, wait, what?
Yeah, it turned around right here. Bishop g4 was played, and the trade with e5. It was very spicy, but apparently the computers think White could have got away with this. Sadukasova does not go for that, and now it looks like Zagnidze is back in the game.
Yeah, I guess she'll play knight takes a4, and Black can probably castle. I mean, I guess White is still a bit better, but it's no longer what it was before.
Are there some ways that maybe White can prevent Black from castling? Instead of knight takes a4, play like knight d5, because then I have knight e7 check ideas if you try to castle. So, I mean, I agree with you that it seems like Black has made a better situation of one that looked very tough, but maybe you're not totally out of the woods yet.
No, this is tricky. I mean, I would think that Black should reply knight e5 here because there are, and I just don't see a better move, and then try to reinforce it with f6. This looks pretty solid. Of course, there is stuff like rook b7. Black still can't castle and can't take on c2 because of rook b8. So it actually doesn't look too pleasant either.
So with this game, then, I mean, I guess, okay, anything can happen, as we know. Blunders happen. But with that game where you thought Zagnidze would be a big favorite, right? That kind of puts you in a position where you start thinking, maybe Team World can draw this match, right? The game between Aronian and Furusha seems okay for Alireza. Maxime doesn't really have an edge at all as White against Rajabov. So what are you thinking right now?
No, it's a good situation. I think that Alireza has probably a more comfortable position. I mean, Black's king is a little bit unsafe. The bishop on g5 is really strong, and it's completely unopposed. I don't see how Black will organize his pieces. On the other hand, it is still pretty solid for Black. And
yeah, this is a funny one with this a6 knight b7 idea. It kind of shocked us. What do you think of this idea? I said, and probably crazily, that maybe it's an idea he's prepped. Not, of course, the exact position, but maybe he's thinking, okay, this is an idea you can make work, because it seems so odd to do this, to put your knight on b7 when you didn't have to. But what do you think about it? Maybe he just thinks this is just fine for white.
I don't know. I think he's just having fun. I mean, for China, they've already qualified, and this match is not too relevant for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually completely irrelevant for them, so they can have some fun. And also, he's had a very good event so far, so he's probably kind of confident and feels he might get away with something like this. It doesn't look clear to me. I don't, because black will have to make like, let's say black plays queen d7 and white takes. I would think that black will take with the a pawn, but this does allow a pass pawn. So probably black doesn't want to do this.
Right.
I mean, because taking with the c pawn allows, you know, knight on d6, and white is the only one who can be better, or queen on d6. So I don't know what. I mean, he can also take on b7.
In which position right now?
Yeah. Take, and cb looks normal. And then, I mean, okay, queen b6 is very safe, but it's going to be a draw most likely. And, well, there's also rook c7 to watch, instead of queen d6 to watch out for. I don't know if that's too concerning for black, because you can just play queen b8. I would assume that white should have enough for a draw,
but black is also okay.
Well, black, I mean, if black doesn't want to allow rook c7 and all this stuff, he can just play queen takes b6. It's completely safe for him.
Yeah. Well, Fabio, I mean, I hate to divert our attention really quick, but I do have one game that we haven't given enough attention to, and I think your input would be extremely valuable because it's not so clear to me. In Jan-Krzysztof Duda versus Bassem Amin over in the Europe versus rest of the world match, what do you make of this position? Because no pawns have been traded, and white has two knights against the two bishops.
I don't like black's position very much. I would like it more if he could have gotten organized in time. If he could, let's say, have his queen on d8 and get c5, bishop g7, and something where. But now it feels like white will get c5 and the pawn on d4 will be very weak. Mm-hmm. I think that's white's plan. Like next move.
Yeah. Well, and black can't play c5 himself because there's just too many things hanging. So yeah, that's huge. c5 is coming.
So like bishop e6 comes to mind here. But then white can play queen b2 and threaten the pawn directly. So I don't know.
So you think this is Team Europe's sort of chance to punch through a victory, because the match hasn't been looking very good for them?
Yeah.
I think this is a good chance to win. Yeah. I think that white has pressure here, but they're both kind of low on time, so it could get random. Because even if you win this pawn on d4, black will always have some counterplay because of the bishops.
Yeah.
Well, Fabi, it's been amazing to have you with us again. You set the tone here with a huge match victory. If you're one of the 25,000 plus with us, you're just tuning in. Fabiano Caruana defeats Wang Hao in a fantastic game that finished quickly. But before we let you go, do us one last favor and just take a look at this game with Ding Liren and Hikaru. Obviously, Ding pushing. But if you were to set up some sort of defensive setup, like give us the high level, I would want my bishop here, my rook here. How does black potentially try to hold this endgame, you think?
Well, this one's particularly easy because if I put my bishop on c4, my pawn on b5, I think black is already better.
Okay,
so,
yeah, a2 is a problem, I guess.
and this is what he's going to try to get by playing, I think, bishop d7 next move and then bishop e6.
Right.
He's going to just start some counterplay. The few questions are like if white can get away with rook a5, but I assume black will generate counterplay against g2 in time with rook e7.
Right.
I think it's actually rook a5, rook e7 is his only move. Otherwise, you have no way to actually get into white's position. So that's one critical line because white does have moves here in b5, for example. But b5 I think shouldn't worry black because at least he has b6 at the very least. b6 and rook a3, bishop b5.
Right.
And,
it's
okay.
nice. Bishop takes b5 and just
bishop takes b5. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble here. Go ahead.
This is completely equal all of a sudden because white's pawns are now broken. His rook is bad. I don't know. c4 is also a logical move instead of rook a5. I would think that c4 is very logical, but it allows rook d7, so maybe this is a bad move. I don't know if white wants to do that.
Okay. Well, you helped, I guess, point out the a2 pawn here and maybe some of the critical lines we might see at this. Okay, obviously a lot still ahead. Who knew you would be done so quickly? Right now you get to go have some rest and watch your teammates. Maybe do what people thought was improbable here and beat China and get your way into the super final. So either way, Fabi, congratulations on a great event here, whether you make it to tomorrow or not. And thank you for being so awesome with all these times you've joined us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Fabi.
Right, see you.
See you guys.
Back over here to the Hikaru cam, the Dingley Ren cam, Fabiano, the maybe one of the highlights of the event so far as the show goes, that he's joined us so much and given his thoughts, you know.
It's been awesome to have him in most of these rounds, and he's been doing so well that we have the pleasure of having him join the broadcast. And I mean, some of these games are just like, I'm looking at the Nana Zagnidze game once more because we're throwing ourselves from match to match because these are the two matches that dictate who makes it to the super final. And Nana Zagnidze's king is out on g6 in her game, but I think she's escaping here.
I think she's doing okay, but if we're predicting it's still a position that white probably won't lose, then I'm actually wondering what's going to happen in the Alireza Firouzja Levon Aronian game, because that game looks like Firouzja is breaking through. So sorry to switch gears again, but I think that game may end up becoming the critical one because Alireza has opened the H file. This is looking very dangerous for Lev.
And Levon had a shaky game earlier today against Fabiano, where at first we loved his position, and then all of a sudden he was down in exchange. But right now you're right that the rook on h6 is hitting the pawn on g6. Some dark square is vulnerable around the black king. So if I can get that configuration I want with bishop to f6, or slide my other rook to h1, in comes a rook to h8. So actually, I mean, what does black do here? Knight f7 hangs the g6 pawn, which is kind of frustrating. But then do I have king h7 there?
Maybe that's the key idea. Is this is kind of a problem actually. You could actually check and then pin, which is funny.
Yeah. Wait, actually, how do you respond to this?
Maybe that's what you have to do. I don't know. No, it looks good for black.
So knight f7, there has to be a move because there's no way Alireza just like walked into a knight fork without a solution available to himself. So
I don't know.
You take on e6, excuse me, and then
maybe yeah, that's a good idea. And then you can bring the other rook to h1.
Yeah, you can play also then bishop c1, bishop d3 kind of stuff too. And I mean,
that's nice. Kick the knight out. The main point of that, everybody, is it opens the d3 square.
Well, I want to go bishop f5 next. That's my real plan.
So bishop c1. Wow, what an interesting position, an interesting moment right here. Rook h6 played, and Levon is on the clock. But speaking of the clock, I think that's the thing you're nervous about if you're Firouzja. Under 5 minutes. Though, for someone who's known as such a fast player, he's managed his time well, I think, as far as, slowing down. He's been willing to get low on the clock to make sure he converts a good position. He used his time well in the game with Sergei Karyakin in the previous round, and I know we didn't follow it live, but I was watching it closely, and he was using his time well, and so if that pays off with a great position, then it's worth it.
Yes, and Levon is bouncing. That's been his reaction of choice thus far, but it is a critical moment here. I think he will spend more time because it's not an easy choice whether to play knight f7 or maybe, I don't know what other moves are really possible here, but the king f7 doesn't look right either. So I think we're in for a bit of a think from Levon.
Okay, well, while he thinks, we have a result in the books that we have to shoot over to. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has drawn his game versus Timur Verjabov, so that's one result in the books that I guess kind of helps Team USA because at least they know for sure that can't be a victory. Because now that they might beat China, a drawn match for Europe means the USA leapfrogs them.
Although Maxime was on the worst side of the draw throughout the game, so I guess in that sense you're like, gosh, could Timur have done a little more? But you're right, it does bring that match a little more clarity. And look at this position.
Let's go over to this young Christoph Duda versus the good doctor, because you're right. It's the one that we haven't given nearly enough attention to, especially because it might be Team Europe's best hope at a W here with JKD playing white.
And I kind of had that game out of the corner of my eye throughout. I needed Fabiano's input because they're all 8 pawns for both sides still remaining. And you don't see that very often. And 2 bishops versus 2 knights, you tend to like that. But with so many pawns on the board, those bishops aren't exactly doing so much. And after c5, the d4 pawn is in some trouble. I don't think white is going to take it just yet, because then you're walking into a pin on the g7 diagonal, from the bishop on g7 to the queen on b2. So you have to be careful about that. But black also needs a move right here, right now. And I'm not seeing an easy one.
Yeah, I'm not either. I mean, you'd like to just kind of stare down and not do anything, because like you said, taking d4 is a little poisoned, but you can't just rely on that because you don't have enough to win the piece. And so white can eventually take it, do even something like take d6, play e5 to block the bishop, and you won a pawn.
That's true. You can't let it sit there for too long. But I also think that if you make some kind of committal decision, like a5, for instance, comes to mind for black, but that's a typical idea. But when the b7 pawn is so weak, and he plays rook to e8, which I think is a totally fine move. But maybe I'll just move my queen out of the way from the diagonal. I think a queen move threatens the pawn on d4. And I'm happy if you ever play d takes c5, because after b takes c5 for white, that b7 pawn becomes a true target.
Yeah, so almost like it's one of those weird positions, like when someone has an isolated pawn, but the best thing to do is actually not to take it, but to just continue to build your stronghold around it. Sort of comparable here. White doesn't really want to take, and then give black the potential compensation. He wants to sit on the advantage. The bishops, as you said, don't have a lot of scope with so many pawns on the board. But then on that note, how do you make a breakthrough? How do you force black to blink first, right? Because as you said, just to point it out visually again, this is really not what you ever want. So what does white do then, if not take the d4 pawn here?
Maybe queen d2, just get my queen off the diagonal, because then I am threatening the pawn.
Okay.
And I'm hoping you take me on c5.
You'd love that, but I won't do that. No soup for you.
But
okay.
There's not really anything clear for black to do instead.
Yeah. And this move actually threatens other things if you really want to force it, like not just knight takes d4, but queen f4. I mean, you're not trying to switch to the king's side necessarily, just pointing out that white has ways to kind of poke, and black doesn't have great ways to improve the pieces.
But you know who does have great ways to improve the pieces? Ali Reza Firouzja, because if we go over back to that game, his attack has been heating up. And look at the rook on g1, threatening a knight f5 type of check or a knight h5 type of check.
Wow.
Everything is going right with white's pieces, and black has not found a way to defend that king.
Wow. What a game here. If Firouzja wins, again, it's been the board twos that seem cursed for Team Europe in this last round. If you're just tuning in, Fabiano Caruana won a fantastic game against Wang Hao that he revealed was basically prep as old as his world championship match versus Magnus Carlsen in 2018, and kind of played a line that he knows is a little suspect, but maybe a good choice for Rapid, and it paid off. Fabiano destroys Wang Hao on board 2, and Ali Reza Firouzja might be beating the Europe board 2 right now. And
he would be the hero for the American team. It sounds weird. Right. He's playing for the world team, right?
Not the hero they asked for necessarily, not on their team, but the one they're getting. So,
yep.
Interesting.
And, I mean, just look at this position. Where does black even move here? There's so many threats revolving around this g6 pawn, the king being on g7. And maybe you just run away with king f8, but can I just steal your pawn and ask questions later?
You'd like that, right? I mean, the threat of knight h5 is a real problem. So, I mean, just to point out again, everyone, like if you try to defend the g-pawn instead, here comes the knight to h5, and I don't know where the king's going to go. Maybe tries to run out.
But then you have knight f4 regardless.
Right. I was going to point out you don't even have to move the knight because it's pinned, but you're right. Your move is very forcing, so just do it and go win the pawn, right? So yeah, this is rook g1, the shuffle, right? The truffle shuffle.
And it's something that's actually easy to miss because your rook on h1 looks so good, doubled on an open file. But there's a king on g7, and now you're creating problems on 2 different files. And he's just going right after that king. I really don't see a move here. King of Fate, it feels like the move that's necessary just so you don't immediately lose the game, because I see so many of these lines looking like it results in immediate defeat. But
the G pawn's falling, like you said.
Yeah,
wow.
It's just such an unpleasant position.
Like you said, Rook G1 easy to miss. The Truffle Shuffle almost as easy to miss as an 80s cult classic. There we go.
Wow, and Team USA is, I mean, actually, I'm looking at Wesley So's game now because everything's going right for Team USA.
Let's do it. Back at
Look
it.
at that game. And you saw that eval bar just plummet and go in Black's favor. Look at that king on F2 versus the king on G7. One of those two kings is safe, and I promise you it's not White's.
First person to mention the Chunk Goonies reference in the Twitch chat, send me a message on Twitter. You get yourself a diamond membership for that subtle pop culture I was feeding. You get the hidden reward. All right, yeah, this is fantastic for Wesley. I mean, at least as Fabiano said, he's not going to lose this as Black, right? Okay, we can always be speaking too soon. Blunders happen, but Black is maybe better and certainly not going to lose this position.
Black for sure is for a choice here.
By the way, Wesley
D4
declined a draw. I can see it. The draw was offered, which is already huge, right? Because he knows he only needs a draw, really. But if he gets a win, that would be clinching it, regardless of what happens in Nakamura and Crush's game.
Well, I wouldn't say a draw isn't necessarily enough, because if he draws, then Team USA makes a draw overall, and then Team Europe draws, then USA is out. So
right.
USA wants to win the match. So I would never accept a draw here with the dominant position,
yep.
Especially as I looked at Hikaru's game a little nervously, as Dingley Ren still remains a bit better in that one. And you don't know what's going to happen between Ju and Jun and Crush, just because it's positioned without any sort of clarity.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Bishop D3 now played by Yu Young-yi. Again, the reason is that the D4 pawn was hanging, so you're kind of cutting off the queen and rook's communication on the pawn. But Black has to be just doing good here. How do you make progress? Do you bring in more forces, B5, B4, and kind of disrupt the blockade, or is there something more concrete?
I want to play Queen A1, but then I figure White's going to push the B pawn, and then my queen has to leave the first rank, which is pretty annoying. So
yeah, and you're still doing fine there. But again, if you want to win, right, that's not the approach. He also has a time advantage, Wesley So. So now's the time to put pressure on White. I kind of like B5. I don't know if it's a good move. It would just be the move I would play as a human, to say, let me just disrupt this queen who's key to guarding everything in White's structure right now.
Yeah, and one thing to keep an eye on, perhaps, Danny, and maybe I'm just getting crazier, is if the queen moves away from A4, perhaps at some moment White will have some sort of rook sacrifice in F7 to say, you don't have any defenders, and I'll get a draw by a bunch of checks. And it seems far-fetched, but sometimes those things happen. Yeah,
you got to keep an eye on it. And the engine reveals that if you miss it, it's a computer move that they never miss, and human beings aren't always ready to give up their rooks with check, but you got to keep an eye on that.
Oh, Danny, we got to go to Dingley Ren versus Hikaru Nakamura. And this is exactly why Wesley didn't take a draw, because look at this game here. And Dingley Ren is winning.
How did he break through on the queen side? What technique here. Amazing. He's up 2 pawns now compared to the 1. Hikaru has gotten the rooks off the board, but the problem is you can't really guard the H pawn and the threat. Here's what's going to happen, everybody. The white king will come to B6. And if the bishop is sitting on C6, then A6 wins in those positions, because you can't take, the bishop hangs. If it's on A6, you drive the C pawn. But either way, even if the bishop isn't hanging, all you have to do is trade, and I don't think you can hold both these pawns, right? They're too far.
Yeah, and a very important to note, and I say this all the time, H8 square, dark square bishop. And the reason why that can be so important here is because at best, White is going to have to trade off both of the queenside pawns for that light square bishop if you're going to try to press for a win over there. And then you still have a winning pawn.
By the way, results coming in rapid fire. I just took a breath and sat back on camera. We got a show. We can stay here with Nakamura and Dingley Ren, but Firouzja has just defeated Levon Aronian, and as we said, he may be the hero for Team USA if somehow they hold on. But like we said, now Nakamura in trouble, but we also have a draw between Zhu Wenjun and Irina Krush. So maybe assessing her teammates' positions, she thinks even if Hikaru doesn't hold here, maybe she likes Wesley So's chances that much. And oh my gosh, look at the Wesley So game. He's on the grind here. So Hikaru flustered, again, as he should be. But let's go over to this game here, the Yu Young-yi game with Wesley So, because Yu Yangyi's first loss of the event may come at the worst time possible for Team Europe.
Yes, and you look at this position, the queen, look at that move, rook h1. I was saying earlier that with that rook on d1, I had wanted to play queen a1, but after b3, the queen didn't have any more squares to work with on the first rank. So what does Wesley do? He gives his queen more squares by playing rook h1, attacks the pawn h2 in the meantime, and now queen a1 comes in, and there's the g1 square and more to work with. So really nice technique there by Wesley. So finding the way forward that we weren't coming up with. And now not only is there queen c1, sometimes there's just, after queen a3, there's queen to d6 opportunities as well.
Oh, wow, what a spot. That's a retreating move you always say yourself are hard to find. So look at you. That's nice. And again, yes, queen a1 never happened, everyone, but that's because of the threat that Robert pointed out. So b3 was forced. And this little game of Tickle is just all about spying this first rank that Yu Yangyi cannot allow. Wow, Wesley is leaning in. And this, Fabiano set the tone with the win, but this might be the victory of the match just because Yu Yangyi has not lost yet. I mean, if Wesley does the unthinkable, beating the player of the tournament with the black pieces, Team USA is going to go wild.
And it's not actually easy yet because queen a1, what Yu Yangyi is trying to do is go king to g3. He's trying to run his king away and say, you actually don't have a check on my king. And well, with that rook on c7, pinning the pawn on f7, there's actually opportunity still for white to have some counter threats and escape this one. So, there's a knight h5 check at some moment, but I guess Yu Yangyi's trying to claim that my king goes to the h file and survives for the time being.
Yeah, it's like, where's the mate? Where's the beef? So crazy. Queen a1 has been played, and indeed you called it. The king puts on his running shoes. Here we go.
Well, this is really some crazy stuff here.
Another game we have to go to real quick. We have to back up here. I'm sorry, every game is crazy, but the Jan-Christoph Duda game with the good Dr. Bassem Amin. I mean, what is going on here? Duda is about to convert, but it's crazy. The exchange sack. Wow.
I mean, Bassem Amin has had some great exchange sacks in this event, including against Fabiano Caruana, coming up with unique approaches. And it looks like it should just be good for white after rook a8 here, pinning that bishop on c8, because you take on e2, I take on c8, and I will gobble up this passed pawn that you have after rook to e1 at the end of this variation. But there are still chances to hold, as we heard Maxime Vachier-Lagrave say in our interview last round. When you have a bishop and those two kingside pawns against a rook and white's two kingside pawns, so just use the h and g pawns in your head with a bishop versus a rook. There are many ways to make a draw there, but with two rooks on the board, that's not going to be easy.
Wow. This is a wild one. I don't know what to say, but the good doctor doing what he can to hold it. Speaking of the good doctor, remind you can now download the Dr. Wolf app on Android, by the way, while we have your attention. And if that wasn't the most forced promo of all time, then you are wrong. All right, here we go. Back to the games. All right, the Hikaru, by the way, kind of slowing down the pace a little bit. I mean, I think partly from a practical point of view, he's trying to make sure that that he keeps the game going as long as he can. Maybe to confuse Europe, to confuse everyone. Right. By the way, Sadukasova and Zagnizi have drawn their game. Just to quickly flash that. So the scoreboard as it reads is accurate, I think, right now. The world is leading Team Europe, but again, maybe Jan-Christoph Duda changes that with a W here as white. I guess we got to go back to the Wesley So game now. Whoa, the king has gone backwards. Something bad happened for Yu Yangyi. We're about to see a victory for So.
Yeah, that king is just being hunted, and queen d2 has been by rook e1 check, and
The
after
queen
king
falls.
d3, there's knight f4 check.
Yeah, I was going to show it. The knight is coming to f4. King, and I don't know, like this. That's probably good
queen
enough.
a1, queen a5 is checkmate.
Mine's better. Mine wins the queen. Okay.
Okay. Just letting you know that checkmate is pretty good.
I'm kidding. All right, awesome stuff. Okay, wow. But how did Wesley handle this, Robert? Give us the technical insight here. Rook e1 was the key move. He didn't go after the king. He caused confusion. What a move to guard e6, right?
Yeah,
wow.
You guard e6, and also you free up more squares for that queen on the first rank.
Guess which one he chose when it mattered most? He chose me.
We all make mistakes, Danny.
Okay, to show everybody, Robert was correct. Mate and 2 was on the board. Queen a1, queen a5. But you know what? Wesley shows where his heart is with his family. has his adopted kid, and I'm happy to call him a proud papa. And guess who's happy about Team USA winning? Captain John Donaldson. Wowzers.
Yep. And so Hikaru's result is irrelevant because Team USA has already won the match.
Yeah, we show the game. He's doing his best to hold and fight mightily. He is. So we'll keep an eye on it. But again, it's irrelevant. Team USA has just done the unthinkable and defeated China in the last round.
Which means they have qualified
to punch their ticket, which is official. It's over.
Yes, it's official.
Oh my gosh. This match doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter anymore because the rest of the world already has 2 points, which means the best that Europe can do is tie the match. But because USA was tied in board points before, and now they clearly have more board points in this round than the Team Europe does, the USA is going through to Super Final Sunday.
Oh my gosh. Well, and you asked it earlier. It was just totally hypothetical at the time. Like, who would you rather face if you were China, USA or Europe? I guess it doesn't matter. They're going to face USA whether they like it or not. And you might say that maybe that's the easier team or something, people who thinking crazily that China would do that on purpose. I don't think so. You don't allow momentum to be handed to anybody to face you, because Team USA just defeated the top performer in Yu Yangyi. Wesley So apparently was the key. And they are going to be riding high into the super finals. So this could be a crazy day of drama tomorrow.
And, well, I mean, Hikaru Nakamura might not even lose, and that would be amazing at this point if he somehow can survive this end game, because it does give him increased confidence when he gets into the super final, because you don't want to go into that on a loss, especially when you have a rematch against the same opponent.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Let's go over there and see Hikaru's game with Ding Liren. Again, Jan Kristoff probably converts this, but did Hikaru get the blockade he needed? Now, you highlighted the key, which is, if this pawn can somehow make the bishop give it up, then you're always winning, right? You've got the right color bishop for the corner, but actually, that's going to be the plan, right? How does the king come over here and not let the black king attack the c pawn? Because if you could just magically put the white king on g6 right now, it's just an easy win for white. You just push the pawn.
Right, so you can try to get your king over to the king side and then play c7 to put your pawn on a protected square. But the problem is, and he starts with c7, and that's a good move, because now the king is split, right? If the king goes to c8, the white king goes to e7, you just push the pawn. He had to go king e8 and look at that move h5. Exactly.
Yeah, that's going to be it. You can see Hikaru, in fact, right there, resigns. A tough loss, but unfortunately for Team Europe, it doesn't matter. Team USA is dancing on Sunday, and we go back to the final game remaining in that Europe versus World match. And what a crazy turnaround this was.
And Jan Kristoff Duda, I mean, Denny, we had been talking about board 3 for Team Europe. That is the board that they've been struggling on and trying to figure out who to play between Anish Giri and Jan Kristoff Duda. And Jan Kristoff Duda coming up huge in this game.
Yep.
It looks like he is going to convert this, but unfortunately it's too little for Team Europe, as Levon Aronian loses to a red-hot Alireza Firouzja, who had 2 excellent games, beating Sergei Karyakin and Levon Aronian the final day. So I know his team was out of it, but you got to tip your cap off to Alireza Firouzja, the superstar of not just of tomorrow, but of today.
Yeah, honestly, again, we kept saying it. He just he kind of won the match for Team USA with this great game over Levon Aronian. As you just saw, I was showing that there is one game still going on in this final 10th round. If you want to head over to chess.com's live server, or just go to go.chess.com/ONC games, it'll pull up the only game remaining. But we're not even going to talk too much about it. Again, all due respect to Humpy Canero and Olga Giria, but the games that mattered are in the books. It started right here. Fabiano Caruana sets the tone with a shocking swift victory over Wang Hao. And then the board 2 fortunes continue for USA, because Alireza Firouzja on a roll defeats Levon Aronian. The board 1 started to swing Team China's way / Team Europe's way as Ding Liren slowly outplayed Hikaru. But it was this game here between Wesley So and Yu Yangyi that I think is the huge shocker, because Yu Yangyi has been the absolute rock of the event. He goes for this plan of a6 and knight b7 that, as Fabiano said, maybe he was kind of having fun there, but it backfired because So unwound and eventually converted on the biggest win of the day. Winning his black over Yu Yangyi was not what we expected. But again, I mean, Team Europe, Team Europe had their own fate in their own hands, right? I mean, Levon lost to Alireza Firouzja, right? Zagniza couldn't get it done against Sadukasova, where she did win last round over Irina Krush. So, sorry, Robert, for rambling. I'm just shocked by this whole thing.
I had no idea where you were going with all that, and I was waiting for you to ask me a question.
I was giving a summary, I guess, 'cause I didn't know what else to say about the craziness that just happened.
Well, you have to be proud of Wesley So and of the U.S. team because they lost a really heartbreaking match earlier to the European squad. And all of a sudden, Maxime was himself feeling down about his game against Hikaru, where he's like, I should have won that game. And actually, in the end, that kind of board point really matters, right? Because if Maxime wins that game against Hikaru, that changes what happens going into this round, because then USA needs to figure out, okay, if we win the match and Europe draws, how many points do we need as a team? And that changes everything. So actually that half point earlier today that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave didn't get against Hikaru Nakamura is maybe the difference.
Well, it's a lot, of course, of second-guessing things and woulda, coulda, shouldas, right? Obviously, Team Europe heartbroken right now, and we love those guys. And Gary Kasparov, as the captain, did everything he could to put the lineup forward that would get the job done. But unfortunately, Team USA shocks the world, maybe, beats China in the last round, and no game was bigger than the one right now we're going to talk about with Grandmaster Wesley So joining us. Wesley, I'm so proud of you, Dad.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
Well, you said Gary did everything he could, right? But he actually didn't.
In what way?
Because he didn't play.
That's true. He didn't play. Well, captains are symbolic in many ways. The players are getting the job done, and you certainly did, Wesley. What a crazy game.
Well, although, Wesley, I'm sorry. I know we're going to congratulate you in a second, but are you a little disappointed you missed a forced checkmate at the end there?
Yeah, I didn't see it until now. I just saw it from looking at it.
So, Wesley, funny story. I called for Rook E3, and Robert called for Queen A1, and guess which one you chose? You chose family. You chose Rook E3.
Yeah, that's crazy, Queen A1. But, I saw this when he played King F2, so just kind of went for it.
Right. Well, Wesley, take us through this game. We had Fabiano join us earlier because, obviously, he won his game very quickly, and so I'm just speeding through what seemed like kind of just, standard stuff here for a Berlin. But
well, I actually played this in Vaikanse against Vladislav Kovalev.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think he played like knight d3 here or something.
Knight d3 in this position instead of a6?
Yeah, or something similar like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Or
okay.
Actually, no. Instead of queen e3, if you go back, he took on g5 instead. Takes on g5, queen takes g5.
Got it.
And then he played knight f3, queen d8, and then queen d1. And the difference is that my queen has lost 2 tempi going back to g5 and then back to d8.
Okay.
And his queen comes. And white's a bit better.
Okay,
But,
so when he didn't do that, excuse me, sorry, we're bouncing around here. I'll back up. So when he instead, obviously you were still aware of that game, but regardless of that, I mean, where did you start to feel like, you might have a chance? I mean, this a6 knight b7 idea was a bit surprising to us. What were your thoughts when he went for it?
well, it's a very ambitious move. So he was clearly playing for a win. Because if he didn't want, he could have just played bishop d3 instead of a6. And the position is very sterile. But yeah, a6, b6, knight b7 is very ambitious. But I think it's also a mistaken plan. Because when I saw knight e4 a few moves ago, when I saw knight e4, I thought white is risking the position here. His knight is stuck on b7.
Mm-hmm.
And I control the only open file on the e file.
Right.
So
And
is it safe to say, Wesley, that when he went for a6, knight b7, you were pretty happy because you're looking at your teammates' boards, you know that Hikaru Nakamura was on the worst side of a position. You probably were happy that he went for this to give you some chances.
Yeah, sure, I was. I mean, I actually thought Hikaru might hold that pawn down endgame.
Mm-hmm.
It was very close. I mean, it was difficult defending, but I assumed he would hold it because he always does. But it was a big thing for Fabiano to win so quickly with white against a very strong player.
Well, this game went on, as you said, this a6, knight b7. It kind of surprised us, too. We weren't as bold as thinking it was maybe bad, but then it turned around very quickly as when you played this bishop takes b7, and then taking a 6 move instead of just taking back on. Obviously, taking here would be bad. But when did you feel you were playing for a win? At what point? Just stop me.
Well, no, actually, I was playing for a win after he played knight b7. I think.
Okay.
I think black's a little better there. Probably white could equalize with perfect play, but I thought only black has chances because the knight is just badly placed on b7. Although like all endgames with the queen trade is much better for me because the knight is stuck there on b7 and my king could come. But of course I knew that probably white could hold with some tactical play. And actually what he played was pretty good. I mean, he had very good holding chances. Yeah, he also calculated well. He saw this fourth line. Okay, rook e4, queen g3, takes cb, bishop a6. And the funny part is this all only works for white because after queen e8, okay, rook c7, queen e8, bishop takes, rook e1, bishop f1. If queen e2, he has check on c8, knight e8, rook takes, and b7. Take queen, take b7, rook f1, and it's a draw. Unless, oh no, actually maybe he has ba7. Yeah, that's win, maybe.
Oh, ba7.
b7.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. But anyway, he's not risking anything here.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, so I had to take with a takes b6, and I thought I'm not risking anything here because he's got some pressure. He's got some problems along the back rank.
Right.
Well, Wesley, you know,
and
as you
missed this rook d1 too. I don't know.
Well, as you went forward here, I mean, with just a couple moves when, you know, with this queen on a4 and rook on d1, it's like you want to play queen a1 so badly, but you don't have space for your queen on the first rank, right? So, you know, then he plays b3, your queen has to retreat. So this rook h1 move, when did you come up with that? And like, you know, at first, did you think that he was getting out, or did you always see this rook h1 move, which was such a fantastic find?
No, actually, it's funny. When I played king g7, if you go back, when I played king g7, I suddenly thought that except king g7, I thought queen a1 looks winning for me. So I don't know. Maybe it does.
Huh. Maybe you were right.
Yeah, I mean, so I was gonna play king g7 and queen a1, but I could have played queen a1 right away, and
Wow.
I only realized that after, because after queen a1, he has to move the bishop, and then I have rook h1, and so it's just like totally lost already.
Yeah.
Because of queen. So I mean, fortunately, I won this game. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to sleep by not playing queen a1.
Right. So you played the safe prophylactic move. Turned out queen a1 was winning right away, but then you did.
Yeah. So now he prevented it, but yeah, I played queen a3, and it's probably very difficult to defend here. Also, I'm not sure if he has any defense either, because queen a3 threatens queen d6 and queen c1.
Yep.
And my king is very safe while his bishop is not doing anything.
As we were analyzing it, we saw this. We highlighted that the king could run, so the obvious moves weren't good, and there were threats of queen e6. But you answered all questions with the move rook e1, which was just very nice. Prevents queen e6, and then the net finally closes. You get to bring the knight into h5. How does black finish the job if the king sits here?
Yeah, king h3, knight. I thought knight f4. Then he has to go to g4. Yeah, and then I could even go to a winning endgame, I think. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can just take on g2 if you want, yeah.
Yeah, should be winning endgame too.
Okay.
But yeah, king h3 was his only move because king f2 loses right away. Oh, actually, I was thinking instead of king h3, maybe he could go to h4 or something. But then queen c1 should be winning.
We'd like to think, right? Or chess is cruel. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
wow.
So I mean, he offered a draw when he played queen d3, and he was probably close to equal at that point. But but
you declined the draw, yeah.
Yeah, I think king f2 was a blunder here. King f2, yeah. So he could have played something else.
Wow. Well, Wesley,
ultimately.
Oh.
Danny, sorry, Robert, you go ahead. Go ahead. You had a question. Go ahead.
Well, so you ultimately secured the full point, and so you move on to the super final tomorrow to have a rematch with China. So after this victory, you're probably feeling confident, but what can you tell everybody? Like, what will it be like in a rematch? Will it be totally different, or do you expect the USA to come out on top once more?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Alireza Firuzja for saving our team. Yep. I'd like to thank Alireza Firuzja for saving our team. And also Fabiano, of course, but he's our teammate. But losing to Europe today in the morning was a tough one. Also because Europe was very lucky to tie the match against India yesterday. So I thought things were not going well for us, and I think the players were down during the break. But we managed to fight and continue, and survive. And tomorrow, do we play one match or two matches?
Danny's face is just like, I don't know, because I've been so focused on this event here, and coming up. Danny, your face, I can't get over it. Contortions on your face.
Guys, I'm as tired as you are. I'm not playing, but we've been doing this since 4 a.m. every day this week, and I don't know the format. I haven't even been thinking about tomorrow. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, China's the favorite because they have like a 200-point rating difference on their women board.
Yeah, it is one match, just so you know, Wesley. Right. I just wanted to see Danny do facial gymnastics for a second. Well, it is one match, and they also have draw odds as the number one seed.
Wesley, before we let you go, we have to ask you the daily question because we asked. What?
They have draw odds. That's crazy.
They do have draw odds, which is crazy. Like I said, I think if they have draw odds, they should give you guys peace odds. I don't know.
So if we tie 2-2, then they win automatically.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Again,
so that's
a lot of things.
Huge.
FIDE event. I don't know. We're doing the best we can here. But let's get your thoughts on the daily question. I think the first time we've ever done a team event like this and trying to come up with something exciting. I guess that's the way the super final will be played. You're right. But we asked the fans, what would it take to beat China? Apparently, it took Wesley So on board 3 versus Yu Yongyi. So that's the answer, I guess, to beat China in the super final. It's Wesley So on board 3.
Yeah, and also we need the quick win from Fabiano against Wang Hao.
Right. Okay, well, Wesley.
I think the 2-2 draw odds is kind of unfair.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
So we
agree.
really got our back against the wall for tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, we wish you the best of luck tomorrow, obviously. And again, huge congratulations on the day today. Obviously, kind of shocking the world here with a dramatic finish. But Wesley, been great to have you in these interviews, and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you, Danny. I've always enjoyed playing on your site, and I always enjoyed your dual commentary with Robert. Thank you to our perfect match.
Thanks so much, Wesley. Appreciate the kind words, and best of skill tomorrow.
And happy Mother's Day to Lotus early. So relay my best.
Yeah, tomorrow Mother's Day.
Yeah. All right, Wesley. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
And here we have who they will be facing, Team China, as we said. And Wesley dropped out of the call there. And this will be the team. We don't know the exact roster. Will it be Ho Yifan? Will it be Zhu Wenjun on board 4? Will there be a different setup as far as the boards 1, 2, and 3, right? It's kind of crazy to predict. I think any lineup they throw would be tough to beat. But okay. Why don't we bring up Team USA and remind everybody their roster and who they'll be bringing?
Yep, they have, as we know, Hikaru Nakamura on board 1. He did just suffer his first loss of the match, but thankfully for the team, it didn't matter. So he'll have to rebound, but it's going to be just 2-2 tie means that China wins. And I know Wesley said, that doesn't seem fair, but then what's the point of playing these first 10 rounds? Like if China dominates the field, what advantage should they have? And I'm not at all criticizing Wesley. It's his opinion, of course. But I do believe that the top team should get some kind of advantage. In sports, it's often home court, home field advantage. So I think that, at the end of the day, China deserved their top place. And you see Team USA, they're tough. But if you look at the overall top performers here, Danny, Fabiano Caruana, Yu Yangyi, no surprise that those two were the best two.
Yep. We'll bring up our top performer slide here, as you were saying. And Fabiano Caruana, Yu Yangyi. Obviously, some other players will not be competing tomorrow, unfortunately. Artemyev and Firouzja, unfortunately for Team USA, won't be playing tomorrow. No, I'm kidding. But it was funny that Wesley said Ali Reza got the job done for them, right? Crazy stuff. But it should be very exciting. We know Hikaru Nakamura will be back on board one, most likely looking for revenge from today. And he almost did hold that endgame. It was interesting. So can't wait to see what happens. Team China versus Team USA. But tomorrow will be Sunday. Happy early Mother's Day to those who may not be able to join us tomorrow. If you have family plans to be with Mom, we appreciate and support that. But maybe Mom wants to watch some chess. We know Robert's mom does often. And so what?
I was saying I have no choice, right? I'm covering the show with you, but then I can celebrate with my mom. So
yeah, I've got my kids planned. We've got a whole early morning plan because I'm gonna be up at 4 a.m. and then I got the oldest one leading the way on some breakfast, so I can get out of here when the round's done and head home. So anyway, it's gonna be a lot of fun tomorrow. We have the super final in the most dramatic fashion possible. If you missed it, Team USA defeats China here in round 10, leapfrogs Team Europe. Not even in terms of match points, as you can see, but in terms of total game points, they barely finish ahead. Robert, the drama was real. It was a ton of fun, and can't wait to see you tomorrow. So on behalf of the whole team here, everybody, make sure you tune in. Thanks for being with us. Shout out to our staff, our production crew, to everyone, all of our partners at FIDE helping make this event possible. Again, it's been amazing, and we can't wait for the last day of the FIDE Chess.com Online Nations Cup, Sunday tomorrow. We'll see you then.